Chapter 2679. Let's go. Luo Qingtong's eyes slightly condensed. She took Fu Yuqing and other thousand silkworm silk thread, almost transparent silk thread, jade purity, forgetting how the silk thread failed to save the most. Luo Qingtong Lingho Luo successfully made the move to retreat immediately, giving her a reaction to succeed. This woman used the move to deal with the spirit beast, knowing that the spirit beast's keen sense of smell is extremely powerful. Only this spirit intelligence loses. Luo is afraid of repeating the same trick. Yuqing held back his sarcasm when his mouth was cut off. His eyes widened, seeing Luo Qingtong's silk thread fluttering, extremely afraid of speed and the slightest gap, flying around Luo Qingtong's silk thread shroud, without any hindrance or trace. What's even more surprising is that Luo Qingtong's silk thread shroud and surround the silk thread completely. It's simple. Gui Yuqing and other fruits are like Luo Qingtong's silk thread shroud. Silk thread shroud, the circle shroud. The great doubt formed by the silk thread scattered the decaying spirits around the silk thread shroud. Don't let the spirit get close to the spirit beast for fear that the spirit will be killed. Luo Qingtong's silk thread shroud every surrounding body shroud, but circle shroud several circles due to the volume of the circle. The circles formed and offset each other, fanning out any decaying spirits. Only this silk thread passed through the team, actually touching anything. It's simply incredible. Luo Qingtong, how can control the silk thread touch? Knowing that Zhou Liangqi burst like a knife. Every Luo Qingtong silk thread shroud touch a bit, immediately the silk thread shroud tangled. Luo Qingtong forcefully juggling blade sits, as if she knows all about the situation and the strengths and weaknesses of the Zhou Liangqi burst. Yuqing's incredible scene is almost numb. The words stuck in his throat almost choked him to death. Ridicule. Ridicule. Ho Shin slaps his face. Luo is simply a monster. Ho Yuqing finally knew that Luo Qingtong saved Ling Shroud and even more underestimate the enemy. She is indeed. Even if she let the prepared Luo Qingtong save Ling Shroud again, it's still easy. The youth is really afraid of the extreme. Chapter 2680. On the other hand, Yi Qianren looked at Luo Qingtong with raised eyebrows. She thought, this woman finally can't keep up the act? Let's see how long she can last. Your method of controlling the threads is rather peculiar, he said slowly to Luo Qingtong. Haha. Luo Qingtong laughed dryly. Naturally, she'd used her eye sorcery to achieve this. But if Luo Qingtong didn't say anything, no one would know. This was the best she could do. If it still didn't work, then she'd have no choice but to reveal her identity. At that time, this man wouldn't speak to her so gently. As Luo Qingtong thought this, the corners of her lips twitched. She could almost hear this man's exasperated roar. Luo Qi. She only hoped that this time, they'd be able to reach the heart of the continent smoothly. Mommy, please delay the exposure of my identity for a little while longer. Please don't come as fiercely as a storm. Luo Qingtong prayed in her heart. Fortunately, Yi Qianxian didn't say anything else after saying this. Whoosh. He hugged Luo Qingtong's waist tightly with both hands. With a flick of his sleeves, his entire body shot forward like an arrow. Boom. When he leaped up, the other members of the Lian family of the Flying Star clan and the Chu family of the Heavenly Wind clan all took action. Chu Yuqing, who'd been paying attention to Luo Qingtong's threads, realized that his understanding of Luo Qingtong was still far from the upper limit. The threads seemed to have a mind of their own, following their movements. Almost at the same time as their figures rushed forward, the threads all moved in response. It must be known that everyone's speed was different. Some were fast, some were slow, some were tall, some were short. Even the aura of power that burst forth from their bodies was different. This difference was something that even they themselves could not detect, let alone control. However, Luo Qingtong was able to detect their outburst of strength in advance, and take into account their speed and height. This was simply terrifying. The silk threads controlled by Luo Qingtong surrounded them like a protector, but didn't hinder their movements. They didn't need to worry about the existence of these threads at all. They didn't need to worry about disturbing the operation of these threads, which would limit their speed and attacks. Because those threads were like living creatures, they would automatically avoid them. Was this Luo Xiaoqi a demon or an immortal? Or a god? Chu Yuqing had never seen such an inconceivable thing before. In that instant, Luo Qingtong's move stunned him. It was the same for Chu Kuer, Chu Yufei, and the others. They were also disdainful of Luo Qingtong's action of taking out the silk thread. It was only because they had been taught a lesson before that they didn't dare to speak again. However, the disdain and mockery in their hearts didn't lessen at all. They felt that Luo Qingtong's actions were nothing more than sensationalism. What kind of protection could her actions provide? However, at that moment, seeing Luo Qingtong skillfully taking everyone into her protection, their expressions finally changed. Luo Qingtong's actions could already be called a divine skill. Perhaps even the sky martial arts realm experts who could see through the changes of the world's origin energy wouldn't dare say that they could do what Luo Qingtong did. As for the sky martial arts realm, what kind of valiant and unattainable strength and realm was that? Chu Kuer, Chu Yufei, and the others simply couldn't imagine it. After all, the strongest person in their Tianfeng Chu clan, Clan Master Chu, was only comparable to the earth martial arts realm. And this was because the power of his bloodline was strong, far surpassing that of ordinary cultivators. Chapter 2681. While Chu Yuqing, Chu Kuer, and the others' expressions changed drastically, Luo Qingtong's team collided with the herd of spirit beasts in the direction of the heart of the continent. Those spirit beasts howled one after another and pounced on them. The Tianfeng Chu family immediately stepped forward under Chu Lingfeng's lead. Chu Lingfeng, who was covered in black armor, looked like a grim reaper from hell. With a wave of his hand, he blocked a huge spirit beast that leaped over. Then there were 2 more, 3 more, 5 more. A total of 5 spirit beasts bit Chu Lingfeng in an instant. The other Tianfeng Chu family members were also bitten by 1 or 2 spirit beasts in an instant. However, Chu Lingfeng could not withstand as many spirit beasts as he could. Because he was standing at the front of the team, he was like the sharpest and heaviest knife that was inserted in the vanguard position. If those spirit beasts wanted to pounce on the Tianfeng Chu family members behind him, they could not avoid Chu Lingfeng. However, this would roar. With a furious roar, Chu Lingfeng's hands tore apart 2 spirit beasts. As for the other 2 spirit beasts that were biting onto his legs, they were also kicked away by him. The sharp bone spurs on his knees directly pierced the bellies of the 2 spirit beasts. The last spirit beast bit Chu Lingfeng's neck, but Chu Lingfeng hit it with his head. It fell to the ground with a whimper, and its skull was crushed by Chu Lingfeng's foot. Roar. Following Chu Lingfeng's roar, the other Tianfeng Chu family members also blocked the attacks of the spirit beasts in front of them. Then, with a whoosh, Lian Xingqian and the others' long swords were mixed with the swords in their left hands, and they attacked together. In an instant, the spirit beasts blocked by the Tianfeng Chu family members were all killed. While they were killing these spirit beasts, blood-red howls sounded one after another from behind them. Everyone's expressions changed slightly. Only then did they remember that they were not only facing spirit beasts from one direction. Spirit beasts from other directions were also urgently waiting to attack. And those were just ordinary disciples who might not be able to block them. Just as their expressions changed slightly, Yi Zichen's expression changed slightly. Roar. Mournful cries of spirit beasts suddenly rang out, followed by the sound of large amounts of blood and heavy objects falling to the ground. Everyone turned around and saw that in the originally unguarded area behind them, invisible threads mixed with blood were rapidly spinning in the air. It turned out that when they were attacking, Luo Qingtong had promptly retracted the protective threads in front of them and added them to the rear. The spirit beasts that were pouncing at the rear were all cut into pieces by these threads. In the other directions, Luo Qingtong's threads also achieved brilliant results. Her threads cooperated with the attacks of the ordinary disciples and the group of mercenaries to firmly guard the other directions except where Lian Xingqian and the others were. Luo Qingtong's threads could be used to attack and defend. When the ordinary disciples attacked, she defended them and prevented the spirit beasts from getting close. When they recovered from their defense, she attacked. Chapter 2682. Roar. After the invisible threads in Luo Qingtong's hands pierced through the limbs and bones of the spirit beasts, they were like marionettes pulling strings. They gathered the bodies of the spirit beasts together. Roar. In Luo Qingtong's hands, the invisible threads were constantly intertwined and dancing in her hands. Boom, boom, boom. The spirit beasts that were pierced by her threads immediately moved uncontrollably and rushed toward the other spirit beasts that were pouncing toward Luo Qingtong and the others. The two sides were fighting fiercely. The spirit beasts that were rushing toward Luo Qingtong and the others were suddenly intercepted halfway. They didn't know what was going on and could only fight back instinctively. However, they couldn't tell which spirit beasts were their enemies and which weren't. Therefore, they could only attack randomly. At this moment, the spirit beasts were in chaos. This was what Lian Xingqian and the others saw when they turned around. They thought that the spirit beasts might be attacked from the back and the left and right, but the scene in front of them was clearly that the spirit beasts were killing each other. Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others who were following Luo Qingtong didn't even make a move. Go, don't stop. Keep going. Luo Qingtong leaned on Yi Qianxian and didn't notice that the man was holding her tighter and tighter. Her 5 fingers were constantly shaking. With her current energy, she could at most ensure that the spirit beasts at the back wouldn't rush over. However, the spirit beasts on the left and right might not be able to stop all of them. Moreover, they could at most hold on for less than 15 minutes. Fortunately, Bei Qing and Feng Yu were here to fill in the gaps. There shouldn't be a problem. When Luo Qingtong's voice sounded, Lian Xingqian and the others came back to their senses. He took a deep look at Luo Qingtong and then said to Chu Qiankong and the others, "The Tianfeng Chu family is very lucky." He was surprised to find a treasure like Luo Xiaoqi as his guard. Lian Xingqian was certain that if it weren't for Luo Qingtong, the chances of them making it out alive would be less than 30%. The remaining 30% were the experts of the Tianfeng Chu clan and the Flying Star Lian clan who had sensed the anomaly on their side in time and came to their rescue. Otherwise, it wouldn't even be 10%. Unlike now, they only cared about cutting through the enemy like a sharp knife. As for the rear and left sides, there was not the slightest bit of worry. There was not even the slightest bit of worry. Awesome. After saying this, he directly slashed away a spirit beast that was charging at him. Then he raised his voice and said to Luo Qingtong with a bright smile, "Luo Qingtong, if we can go back alive today, you can come to the Lian family of the Flying Star if you have any difficulties in the future. I will do my best to solve your problems." As he spoke, his gaze swept over Chu Qiankong, Chu Yuqing, and the others. The meaning of his words was self-evident. Obviously, he wanted Luo Qingtong to come to the Lian family of the Flying Star if Chu Yuqing, Chu Qiankong, and the others tried to harm her again. At that time, they would naturally stand up for her. This was both to repay a debt of gratitude and to recruit her. Luo Qingtong smiled faintly. On the other hand, Chu Yuqing and the others' expressions were abnormally ugly. Wasn't Lian Xingqian implying that they were as blind as a bat? They didn't even know how to recruit a monster like Luo Xiaoqi. Instead, they wanted to take advantage of them. Chu Jingyi glared at Chu Yuqing and the others, then said to Lian Xingqian, "Luo Xiaoqi is close to our young master. Young Master Lian, you don't need to have any ideas about her." His words were very obvious. Luo Xiaoqi was their young master's woman, so the Lian family of the Flying Star Lian clan shouldn't have any ideas about her. Chapter 2683. Hearing Lian Xingqian's words, Luo Qingtong, who had been smiling silently, almost choked. What kind of ambiguous words were Lian Xingqian saying? She still had a jealous man by her side. Chu Jingyi and the others were also dumbfounded. They didn't expect Lian Xingqian to say something like that. But then again, young Master Lian wasn't inferior to their young master at all. No, it wasn't just not bad. Apart from talent, everything else was far ahead of the rest. His young master had been left behind by more than a few streets. Chu Jingyi felt a toothache at the thought of this. He felt that he had opened a door for the Lian family's young master to poach her. What if the Lian family's young master seduced Luo Xiaoqi with his beauty? Their young master was too simple-minded to be a match for the other party. Chu Jingyi and the others' lips twitched at the thought of this. Luo Qingtong's lips were twitching even more than theirs. These people were really trying to kill her. Be serious. I can only hold on for 15 minutes at most. We have to charge into the heart of the continent in that time. Otherwise, we won't be able to withstand the counterattack of those spirit beasts. By then, even Yi Qianxian and the others would be able to save her. The Flying Star Lian family and the Tianfeng Chu family might not be able to escape. Luo Qingtong's words made Lian Xingqian and Chu Jingyi's expressions turn serious. 15 minutes? Lian Xingqian glanced at Luo Qingtong. The latter nodded with an indifferent expression. 15 minutes. But now there's less than 15 minutes left. The moment Luo Qingtong used the threads to pierce those spirit beasts, the time had already begun. All right. Lian Xingqian nodded at Luo Qingtong, then said to the Lian family members and their top guards, "Let's go. We'll charge to the right. You guys charge to the left," he said to the Tianfeng Chu family. As for the middle lane, there was no need to worry about it. Chu Lingfeng was at the front, while Yi Qianxian and the others were guarding Luo Qingtong in the middle. Attacking from 3 directions simultaneously was the fastest way to break through when there was nothing to worry about from the left, right, and rear. Boom. Led by Lian Xingqian, the people of the Flying Star Lian family and the Tianfeng Chu family unleashed 200% of their combat power and broke through the barrier rapidly. The large group of spirit beasts that were charging towards them were all cut up by them in batches. They circled from the front left and the front right, and finally met up with Chu Lingfeng, who was right in front. A large number of spirit beasts died under their swords and palms. Like a sharp sword, everyone rushed towards the peak of the mountain in front of them. When the spirit beasts saw that they were getting closer and closer to the heart of the continent, their roars became even more deafening. Behind them, countless spirit beasts were chasing after them. Almost all of them came from all directions of the cave world. At that moment, these spirit beasts were running with all their might towards the team. Luo Qingtong's fingers moved continuously, using the threads to guide the spirit beasts. She kept causing them to fall into a state of mutual destruction, delaying their pursuit. If someone were to look down from the sky at this moment, they would realize that the entire mountain range was densely covered by countless spirit beasts. Chapter 2684. Once they stopped, the huge wave formed by the spirit beasts behind them would completely devour them. 100 meters, 50 meters, 40 meters, Luo Qingtong and the others were getting closer and closer to the heart of the continent. Roar! Finally, some spirit beasts broke through the protection of Luo Qingtong's silk threads and rushed into the group. Kill! Yi Qianxian's eyes were cold as he waved his sleeve. Bang! 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 Countless violent explosions sounded. In an instant, the bodies of the spirit beasts were smashed into minced meat by Beiqing and Fengyu's attacks. However, their attacks were mixed with the attacks of the mercenaries and ordinary disciples, so no one noticed them and knew that they were the culprits. Otherwise, some of the mercenaries and ordinary disciples would have died. After all, they were not strong enough to fight against these spirit beasts. At this moment, perhaps because Luo Qingtong and the others were getting closer to the heart of the continent, the spirit beasts that rushed out were all at LV9 of the human martial realm. If not for Beiqing, Fengyu, and the others, they would have died. With the strength of Lian Xingqian, Chu Lingfeng, and the others, they would have suffered heavy losses. Not to mention that he was still able to charge forward like this. However, the battle was so intense that no one noticed that. Moreover, no one knew that the strength that Beiqing and Fengyu had revealed had already surpassed the strength of a cultivator of the 9th level of the human martial layer. Boom! 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 The blood of countless spirit beasts splashed. The 1,000 silkworms threads in Luo Qingtong's hands were not enough. However, she did not retract them. After all, her silk threads could not stop the high-level spirit beasts, but they could stop the large number of ordinary spirit beasts. The number of spirit beasts gathered together was enough to overturn rivers and seas. Let's go. Let's charge over. Seeing that the group was only 20 meters away from the heart of the continent, Luo Qingtong wanted them to continue in one go. Roar! An extremely violent roar came from the front. Then the crowd saw a spiritual beast lying on the ground, its body twitching violently. Above its body, a huge transparent figure seemed to be entering its body. Not good. It's those great Tao spirits. Lian Xingqian glanced over and shouted, "They're merging with the spiritual beasts. We cannot let them succeed." When the spirit beasts pounced on Luo Qingtong and the others, the great Tao spirits also pounced on them. However, because Luo Qingtong and the others were constantly surrounded by the decaying spirit qi, they simply couldn't get close to them. As for Lian Xing and the others, their stellar swords were able to condense and disperse at will. Thus, they were able to easily kill them. As long as they came into contact with even the slightest bit of decaying spiritual qi, they wouldn't be able to completely conceal themselves in the midst of life spiritual qi, and would be killed by the Lian clan members. Over time, they no longer dared to approach. Unexpectedly, they were all condensing together at this moment. Luo Qingtong and the others watched as the great Tao spirits merged into the spirit beast's body. How could they not know that this would greatly increase the spirit beast's strength? However, there was no way for them to stop it now. The spirit beast was at the back of the group, close to the edge of the heart of the continent. No one noticed the changes on its side. Chapter 2685. Roar. The spirit beast roared violently, and its bones creaked violently. Its fur, flesh, and bones were all expanding violently. In the blink of an eye, its body had grown more than 10 times larger than before. Its entire body had changed greatly. The ferocious and ruthless aura around him was incomparably fierce and sharp. Earth martial arts realm. Lian Xingqian and the others were more knowledgeable than ordinary people. They could tell at a glance that the spirit beast's aura had skyrocketed. Their faces immediately turned pale. Roar. Following the roar of the spirit beast, the entire cave world began to tremble violently. Lian Xingqian and the others were about 20 meters away from the heart of the continent when the spirit beast roared fiercely. Immediately, they lost their balance and were all blasted back by the huge force contained in the roar. All of them coughed out a mouthful of blood. In an instant, their faces turned as pale as paper. All of them had been injured by the roar. Earth martial arts realm. So powerful. Lian Xingqian and the others were horrified. They had never seen an expert above the earth martial arts realm make a move before. They didn't know that the power of the attack would be so terrifying. A single roar was enough to injure them. Wouldn't all of them be torn to shreds by the time it made its move? Even the top guards at LV9 of the human martial arts realm had ugly looks on their faces. They saw it more clearly than Lian Xingqian and the others. This spirit beast wasn't as simple as having just entered the earth martial arts realm. Such a powerful roar not only injured Lian Xingqian and the others, but also caused their qi and blood to churn violently. They couldn't condense their qi and blood in a short period of time. What did it mean to be unable to condense their qi and blood? It meant that they had no power to fight back in front of this spirit beast. Being suppressed so obviously, this spirit beast was definitely not in the earth martial arts realm, or a low-level earth martial arts realm. It should be very close to the middle level, which was LV4 of the earth martial arts realm. Damn it, they discovered it too late. Otherwise, if they interrupted the fusion of those spirits of Tao and that spirit beast in time, this kind of thing would definitely not have happened. But who would have thought that the great Tao spirits could fuse with these spirit beasts? They didn't know anything about great Tao spirits. After all, it was something that only existed in legends. When the spirit beast roared, Beiqing, Fengyu, and the others flew back and stood guard beside Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianxian. The power in their bodies was not affected in the slightest. It was just that no one knew about it at the moment. As they retreated, Luo Qingtong grabbed Yi Qianxian's hand. My dear moi, please don't be angry with me. I really didn't mean to hide my identity, but I really have my own difficulties. Well, we can't wash our dirty linen in public. No matter what you do when we get back, I'll accept any punishment, all right? Don't be angry now, please don't be angry. Be good. I'll treat your meridians. Chapter 2686. She didn't say it explicitly, but she believed that this man would understand. God knew that she had planned everything, but she didn't expect the mission of the heart of the continent to be so deceptive. Now that this spirit beast had suddenly mutated, Luo Qingtong wasn't sure if Yi Qianxian and the others could handle it. This man was injured, and Luo Qingtong absolutely couldn't let him take risks. He could only treat the injuries on his body first. But once she started to act, her identity would be exposed. Therefore Luo Qingtong could only tell him everything. She only hoped that this man wouldn't be so angry that he wouldn't let her treat him. Luo Qingtong was so affectionate and cute. Yi Qianxian found it interesting, and there was an indescribable satisfaction in his eyes. He didn't know what she meant by affectionate and affectionate. Yi Qianxian didn't know what it meant, but he understood the word love very well. Was this woman saying that she loved him? Sure enough, she was born cunning. Every time she got into trouble, she would use sweet words to coax him. Did she think he was a 3-year-old child? Yi Qianxian thought so, and the curve between his eyebrows suddenly rose. There was also a faint smile at the corner of his lips. If it weren't for the white jade mask, such intense joy would almost burn people's eyes. He was as beautiful as jade and dazzling. Such words were not only used to describe women. Now Yi Qianxian's face was even more dazzling than the scorching sun in the sky. It could be said that he was handsome and dazzling. Humph! Luo Qingtong. Yi Qianxian's smile was dazzling, but the cold snort in his mouth didn't diminish at all. You? Before he could finish speaking, Luo Qingtong hurriedly said, Yes, I know. I lied to you. I know I was wrong. Good girl, let me treat your injuries first. By the way, remember to call me Luo Qi or Luo Xiaoqi. Don't call me by the wrong name, darling. You're in big trouble. You. Yi Qianxian was furious. His words were all stuffed back into his stomach by Luo Qingtong's words. Why was this woman so infuriating? She had said everything she needed to say. What did he say? Why didn't this woman play by the rules? Yi Qianxian gritted his teeth. He wanted to say something, but Luo Qingtong's power had already rushed into his body. As soon as Luo Qingtong's power entered his body, Luo Qingtong immediately felt the miserable state of his meridians. You man! This time it was Luo Qingtong's turn to gnash her teeth. You were so badly injured, yet you still dared to attack. Thinking back to how Yi Qianxian had wantonly slaughtered his way through the abandoned continent, Luo Qingtong felt a burst of anger. Did this man take his body seriously at all? Humph! If someone hadn't hidden his identity, would I have ended up like this? Yi Qianxian gritted his teeth and whispered in her ear. This woman was so obedient when she bowed her head and admitted her mistake. Now, she immediately exposed her true nature, and even dared to be fierce to him? Luo Qingtong was speechless for a while. It seemed that this was indeed her fault? That's not right. She didn't know his true identity at that time. She only found out later. Did this count? Luo Qingtong's lips twitched, but she still felt guilty and didn't refute. Chapter 2687. With that thought in mind, Luo Qingtong hurriedly changed the topic. Let me treat you. How did you end up like this? And the Shifeng dragon ring on your body, why is it gone? If she had the Shifeng dragon ring, she would not have missed this man at the beginning. And the latter hid his identity and face, so there must be some hidden reasons. Something happened. It's not good to take it with me, so I took it off. Yi Qianxian's face was indifferent, and he did not mention what happened in Tiandu. He did not want Luo Qingtong to worry. Naturally, he would deal with the matter over there. In any case, he would not let anyone hurt the woman in front of him. No one. And his life would not be at the mercy of others. Yes. Hearing Yi Qianxian's words, Luo Qingtong knew that he was hiding something. Did he not want her to know and worry her? Luo Qingtong did not say anything, but she kept this matter in her heart. The more Yi Qianxian did not say, the more it proved that it had something to do with that side. Thinking of what Elder Yu had told her about that side, Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes slightly. One day, she would make a trip there and see who was bullying her man. Heavenly vain body, short-lived body? Her man was naturally blessed with both good fortune and a long-lived and worry-free image. As for those people, they would all wait and see who would live longer in the end. She was afraid that they would not live past her time. Luo Qingtong snorted coldly, but the power in her body did not stop at all, and directly circulated in Yi Qianxian's body. As the power in her body flowed, the strength of Yi Qianxian's meridians was repaired little by little. The broken meridians before were not so tough. With a little force, the broken meridians could be retensioned and become tough again. The strength of Yi Qianxian's meridians was improving little by little. In the depths of his body, there was an enormous and terrifying power that could shatter the heavens and rend the earth. At this moment, when it sensed that his meridians were being repaired, it almost let out a joyous buzzing sound. If Yi Qianxian hadn't intentionally controlled it, the roars of dragons and tigers would have been heard. The power of its sound was probably even greater than that of the spirit beast from before. At this moment, the spirit beast had also completed its fusion. It abruptly flipped over and stood up, its feet stomping on the ground. Its entire body was still covered in blood from the forced enlargement of its body. However, his entire body had already leaped into the air in an instant. With a valiant aura that could tear through everything, he rushed towards Luo Qingtong and the others. Roar! Along with its wild roar, the people of the Flying Star Lian family and the Tianfeng Chu family, as well as the guards of the LV9 human martial realm, all of them were shaken to the point that their faces turned pale. The qi and blood in their bodies were surging, and they could not summon any strength to fight back. Their faces were filled with despair. They had never thought that they would fail at the final step, even though they had almost reached the final step. The strength of this mutated spirit beast was too strong for them to deal with. They had already closed their eyes in despair, and were ready to die. Bei Qing, Feng Yu and the others frowned. They looked at each other, and were ready to take action. With their strength, even if they were sealed, it was not difficult to deal with this spirit beast. Chapter 2688. Get out of the way. You guys deal with those low-level spirit beasts. As he spoke, a group of figures shot out from behind Luo Qingtong, and the others like a straight arrow. The figures of those people were extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, Lian Xingqian and the others saw them rush from the foot of the mountain to the top. Their speed was much faster than Luo Qingtong and the others. Their journey to Tibet was accompanied by the roars of countless spirit beasts. Those spirit beasts were sent flying by the airwaves around them. After they rolled and got up again, they immediately charged in their direction. Earth Martial Arts Realm. So many Earth Martial Arts Realm experts. The moment they saw these people appear, Chu Qiankong and the others couldn't help but cry out. They looked at the group of people in front of them with pale faces. There weren't many of them, only about 20 or 30 of them, but their strength was terrifying. Earth Martial Arts Realm, Earth Martial Arts Realm, Earth Martial Arts Realm. Most of these people were in the Earth Martial Arts Realm. Only a few of them were in the 9th level of the Human Martial Arts Realm, but their strength was not something that ordinary people in the 9th level of the Human Martial Arts Realm could compare with. At least, the airwaves from the mutated spirit beast's roar had no effect on those people in the 9th level of the Human Martial Arts Realm. Their expressions were normal, and even the frequency of their breathing didn't change. There are so many Earth Martial Arts Realm experts. Where did they come from? Lian Xingqian, Chu Qiankong and the others' faces turned into paste. They had thought that they were the only ones on this abandoned continent. They hadn't expected that there would be such a powerful and terrifying group of people hidden here. You caused the Tianluo grass phenomenon on this abandoned continent. Lian Xingqian's expression changed slightly. His reaction was faster than the average person's. He quickly figured it out. The two families had only sent their juniors to participate in the fight for the Tianluo grass. It was these people who had done it. Otherwise, how could these people appear here? One had to know that the abandoned continent had been sealed off by the two families from the very beginning. Although these people were strong, it was not to the extent that they could sneak into the abandoned continent without anyone noticing. Moreover, even if they could do it, why would they do it? It was clear that they had long known about the anomaly in the abandoned continent, and had come for something in the heart of the continent. The Lian clan and the Chu clan were lucky enough to discover traces of the heavenly luo grass. It was probably a mistake on their part. However, for some unknown reason, these people did not kill the two families to silence them. Instead, they allowed them to pass on the information. However, because of these people's misdirection, the two families misjudged the situation on this abandoned continent, and made an agreement for the younger generation to fight for it. When Lian Xingqian's words came out, Zhang Beiyue, who was the leader, suddenly looked up at him and said in a deep voice, "You are not bad, quite smart." Although his mouth was full of praise, His eyes were not as moved as when he was praising Luo Qingtang. Obviously, he was just saying it casually. The heart of the continent isn't something your two families can covet. Help us kill this spirit beast and enter the heart of the continent, and I can guarantee that you won't die. Zhang Beiyue's expression was indifferent. There was no fluctuation or change in his gaze as he looked at Lian Xingqian and the others. Chapter 2689. This young man, Zhang Beiyue, and the others watched as the Flying Star Lian family and the Tianfeng Chu family entered the cave world where the heart of the continent was located. The extraordinary ability that Luo Qingtang displayed during this process surprised him very much. Not only did she decisively guide the decaying spirit energy into the cave, but also the ability of the silk thread that she revealed when attacking the heart of the continent surprised him very much. He originally thought that the silk thread ability that Luo Qingtang displayed when she saved Chu Lingfeng was already at her strongest state. He didn't expect that Luo Qingtang didn't use her full strength at that time. The ability to penetrate and control those spirit beast silk threads, and the protective ability that she displayed to envelop the Tianfeng Chu family and the Flying Star Lian family were both very amazing. This young man was really too rare. Unfortunately, he had a mission this time and couldn't make an invitation. Therefore, although Zhang Beiyue's gaze was fixed on Luo Qingtang, he didn't move or speak at all. The middle-aged man beside him, the one who praised Luo Qingtang in front of Zhang Beiyue, looked at Luo Qingtang with a chuckle and said, "You are a strange young man. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have shown up. Let's not beat around the bush. This spirit beast is not something that you can deal with. We can show ourselves after you're all dead. We can still deal with this spirit beast. But we will inevitably suffer some losses. Now we show up. You can block the other spirit beasts for us, and help us enter the heart of the continent. You can take the Tianluo grass inside. How about it?" The middle-aged man's voice carried a smile. However, except for when he faced Luo Qingtang, there was a trace of surprise and admiration in his eyes. When he looked at the others, there was no fluctuation in his gaze. Obviously, the existence of Lian Xingqian and the others was not worth mentioning at all to them. Whether the other party agreed or not, it didn't matter to them. It was only because Luo Qingtang's ability was too strange that they had taken a fancy to her. That was why they had shown themselves. Otherwise, they wouldn't care about the lives of Lian Xing and the others. Except for Luo Qingtang, the rest of the people present were not worth mentioning. Of course, that was because they couldn't see through Yi Qianxian and the other's strength. Otherwise, they wouldn't think so. The middle-aged man was full of smiles. His words were much gentler than Zhang Beiyue's. However, the meaning behind his words still made the expressions of the people from the Tianfeng Chu clan and the Flying Star Lian clan turn ugly. Which one of them wasn't a genius from their respective star fields? Both the Tianfeng Chu clan and the Flying Star Lian clan were among the top clans in the 6-star sector. But at this moment, in front of Zhang Beiyue and the others, they were not taken seriously at all. On the contrary, Luo Qingtang, a small mercenary, had received the other party's appreciation and help. These people made it very clear that if it hadn't been for Luo Qingtang, they wouldn't have shown themselves at all. If that were the case, then the only path left for them to face the spirit beast would be death. Everyone felt an indescribable feeling in their hearts. Before this, who would have thought that this would be the outcome? Luo Qingtang, an ordinary mercenary, had become their savior. Chapter 2690. Especially Chu Yuqing and the others. They'd looked down on Luo Qingtang and despised her before, but now they'd been slapped in the face. The middle-aged man's words were like a slap to their faces, causing them to lose all face. Originally, they'd only been able to suppress Luo Qingtang because of their status. Now that Zhang Beiyue and the others had appeared, they'd instantly crushed their status as disciples of the Tianfeng Chu clan to the ground. The other party's strength wasn't common even in a 4-star region. It was very likely that he was a disciple of a force above a 3-star region. Even such a person treated Luo Qingtang differently. Compared to Luo Qingtang, what was there to be superior about? Chu Yuqing and the others had ugly expressions, but Luo Qingtang hadn't heard what Zhang Beiyue and the others had said. At this moment, she was wholeheartedly treating Yi Qianxian. Her current strength couldn't be compared to the past. In the past, Luo Qingtong's strength had been low, but when she'd treated Yi Qianxian's meridians, she'd always caused a huge commotion. But now, her strength had risen to almost the level of the exalted realm. Moreover, in the series of battles just now, her bottleneck to the exalted realm had clearly loosened. Now that he was treating Yi Qianren, he didn't say anything. At the same time, her strength was constantly rushing towards the exalted realm. Luo Qingtong had a feeling that if she could break through to the exalted realm this time, it wouldn't be as simple as the initial exalted realm, or the crimson exalted realm. It was very likely that she'd be able to break through to the orange exalted realm, or even the yellow exalted realm. Luo Qingtong had already accumulated enough strength, but for some reason, she hadn't been able to break through. If she could break through now, she'd definitely be able to break through several levels in one go. Thus, she focused on treating Yi Qianxian's injuries. She'd already closed off her perception of the outside world, to prevent herself from being distracted. In her opinion, no matter how ferocious the spirit beast was, Beiqing, Fengyu, and the others should be able to stop it. She took advantage of this time to quickly treat Yi Qianxian. She wanted to prevent this man from overdoing it, and damaging the strength of his meridians. The strength of Yi Qianxian's meridians was even more miserable than when Luo Qingtong had first met him. It was already close to single digits, and only a few pitiful numbers were left hanging there. Luo Qingtong didn't know how this man could be so nonchalant. One had to know that this number represented the strength of Yi Qianxian's meridians. It was as brittle as a piece of paper. This man actually dared to act so recklessly just now. How infuriating. Luo Qingtong's strength was silently treating Yi Qianxian's meridians. At the same time, she was using the man's strength to break through the bottleneck of the exalted realm. How could she have the time to care about what was going on outside at this critical moment? Yi Qianxian also turned a deaf ear to what was going on outside in order to fully cooperate with her. The two of them didn't speak, but Beiqing, Fengyu, and the others couldn't let anyone see anything wrong with them. A group of people surrounded Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianxian, so that no one could see what they were doing inside. Then one of them said in a low voice, "Young Master Shaoqi said it's okay. But she's a little tired now. Controlling the threads just now was very taxing on her." Chapter 2691. When Fengyu and the others spoke, Zhang Beiyue and the others immediately focused their attention on them. With one look, they realized that they were different from the top 9th level human martial realm guards beside Lian Xingqian and the others. They were not affected by the spirit beast's power. Obviously, they were not ordinary 9th level human martial realm experts. Their strength was far more tyrannical than ordinary 9th level human martial realm experts. Okay. Zhang Beiyue nodded. They had seen Luo Qingtong's consumption just now and didn't feel that there was anything wrong with Beiqing and Fengyu's words. Besides, they came out this time to borrow Luo Qingtong's ability to contain the large number of spirit beasts. Otherwise, when they were dealing with the mutated spirit beast, those low-level spirit beasts would continuously rush up, and they would be distracted. At that time, it was very likely that they would be injured. If not, they wouldn't have shown up. After all, if they could, they didn't want to show up in front of people. That ancient divine object was too important. Even if they got it, they had to be careful. Otherwise, it would inevitably cause trouble for the Zhan family. But at this moment, the mutated spirit beast's strength was somewhat beyond their expectations. In order to prevent possible accidents, they could only show up and let Luo Qingtong and the others help. Now that Luo Qingtong's consumption was too great, Beiqing and Fengyu's help was the same. However, the other party's strength was so tyrannical that they were obviously not from the 6-star region. Could it be that they were from the 5-star region, or even the 4-star region? Zhang Beiyue's eyes narrowed slightly. Although he was puzzled, he didn't care very much. With the strength of their group, so what if Beiqing and Fengyu's strength were far beyond the ordinary 9th-level human martial realm? The strength of the human martial realm and the earth martial realm were not at the same level. In the end, the human martial realm did not transcend the human level, and the earth martial realm had already reached the level of heaven and earth. Heaven, earth, and human, these three realms were divided. Just from the meaning of these three words, one could already know the level of these three realms. There was a difference between heaven and earth, and between heaven and earth and humans. Zhang Beiyue was not worried that Beiqing and Fengyu would pose any threat to them. Then let's do it. As he spoke, he rose to his feet and charged towards the spirit beast in front of him. When Zhang Beiyue and the others appeared, the spirit beast was blocked in midair by the net of auras that were intertwined around them. At this moment, it was howling madly as it charged towards the net formed by the Zhang family members. At this time, Zhang Beiyue appeared in front of it, which was exactly what it wanted. It immediately attacked Zhang Beiyue with a claw. When the spirit beast pounced on Zhang Beiyue, the people of the Zhang family also moved. With a boom, he appeared beside Zhang Beiyue and fought against the huge mutated spirit beast with him. When Beiqing and Fengyu attacked Zhang Beiyue and the others, they also attacked together with the people from the Tianfeng Chu clan and the Flying Star Lian clan to stop the other spirit beasts that were attacking from all directions. When they attacked, there was an explosion in Luo Qingtong's body. Then the aura in her body rose to the level of the Venerate realm with a boom. Chapter 2692. Her strength was rising rapidly. Early Exalted Realm, Red Revered Realm, First Level, Second Level, Third Level. Luo Qingtong's strength wasn't too great. At this time, everyone was immersed in the battle with the spirit beasts. The changes and sounds within her body weren't obvious, so no one noticed them. Furthermore, no one noticed that the aura in her body was rising at an extremely shocking speed. This was all of the strength that Luo Qingtong had accumulated during this time, as well as Yi Qianqian's strength and aura. To her, this man's aura was like a fish in water. It fused into her body without any hindrance, coordinating with her strength and comprehension of laws, constantly raising her strength. And during this process, Yi Qianqian's meridians were constantly being repaired. Originally, he was envied by the heavens. No matter what sort of heavenly treasure he used, it was only able to slow down the speed at which his meridians ruptured. But now, under the circulation of Luo Qingtong's aura, it was constantly being repaired and enhanced. 1%, 5%, 10%. Yi Qianqian's meridians were originally damaged to the point of no return, because he had used all of his strength in his battle with the Sky Capital Emperor. But under the healing effects of Luo Qingtong's aura, the strength of his meridians was restored to 10%. This was the same level of strength that Yi Qianxian had in the true Spill continent. And at this time, the rate at which his meridians were being repaired didn't stop. Luo Qingtong's strength was no longer at the same level as before. With her strength, she could naturally restore Yi Qianxian's meridians to an even higher level. If the heavens want him to die, then I won't let him die. Let's see who can take my man's life from my hands. Luo Qingtong's eyes were cold as she continued to enhance Yi Qianxian's meridians. The fact that Yi Qianren was heavily injured this time had truly agitated her. This man had a proud temperament. Luo Qingtong didn't want to force him to say things he didn't want to say. But at the thought of someone bullying her man when she was not around, Luo Qingtong's heart burned with anger. Only she could bully her man, didn't she know that? If not for the fact that Luo Qingtong's strength was not enough, she would have wanted to restore the strength of Yi Qianxian's meridians. At that time, whoever dared to bully her man would be slapped to death. As Luo Qingtong thought of this, she immediately did her best to restore the strength of Yi Qianxian's meridians. At this moment, there was a loud boom. A loud explosion rang out, followed by a mournful and tragic howl of a beast, in the direction of Zhang Beiyue and the others. They formed a battle formation and directly attacked. Golden lightning formed in the sky, and with a bang, the huge mutated spirit beast was blasted away. The latter's body tumbled in the air, and finally smashed into the heart of the continent not far away. The huge spirit beast's body overflowed with blood, dyeing its fur and the ground red. A thunderous sword wound ran from its chest all the way to its tailbone, penetrating its abdomen and almost coming out of its back. The huge spirit beast lay on the ground, its body violently undulating, and then it stopped moving. Chapter 2693. They almost crashed into the Tianfeng Chu clan and the Flying Star Lien clan behind them. It was obvious that they had expended a lot of energy to launch this attack. Their faces were pale. Not only that, but a few of them were bleeding from the corners of their lips. All right, let's go. Zhang Beiyue wiped the blood from his lips and barely managed to calm the rolling air waves in his body. He was about to lead the Zhang clan into the heart of the continent. Suddenly, a voice came from behind them. It was a smile that did not reach his eyes. Young Master Zhang, why are you in such a hurry to leave? I have to thank you for clearing all the obstacles for us along the way. Zhang Beiyue and the others froze when they heard this. Then they turned around and looked at the bottom of the mountain not far away. There, a group of figures in blood-red robes appeared in front of everyone. The demonic moon sect. Zhang Beiyue and the others narrowed their eyes. They did not know why the demonic moon sect would appear here. Shouldn't they be seriously injured and unable to cause any more trouble? Zhang Beiyue and the others waited outside the hole in the heart of the continent for a long time. They were sure that the demonic moon sect would not be able to cause trouble. However, he did not expect that the demonic moon sect would suddenly appear right after he and the others killed the spirit beast. Not only that, but their strength. Zhang Beiyue and the others looked at the demonic moon sect's strength with a grave expression. The other party's strength had recovered. Not only that, but it had also improved compared to before. Zhang Beiyue and the others' hearts sank. They did not know how heavy it was. They had just dealt with the gigantic mutated spirit beast, and even though they had managed to knock it away with a single blow, they had still suffered quite a bit of damage from the attack as well. Not only that, but they had also used up a lot of their strength. Under such circumstances, it was very disadvantageous for them to face the demonic moon sect's people who had not lost any strength and strength. What was going on? How could the demonic moon sect's people recover their strength? The medicinal pills here were completely useless. Zhang Beiyue and the others thought. They glanced and saw a black figure standing beside the demonic moon sect's people. The black figure stood beside the demonic moon sect's people, and the leader of the demonic moon sect's people. Zhang Beiyue and the others' hearts skipped a beat when they saw that they were on equal footing. Their gazes were focused on the black figure. However, the figure was shrouded in a black robe from top to bottom. The shadow of the wide hood completely covered his face, so much that no one could see anything. Even if he raised his head slightly, no one could see what he looked like under the hood. Who are you? Zhang Beiyue looked at the black-robed man warily, his face cold. If he was not mistaken, this person's people's people. These people from the demonic moon sect really deserved to die. He stared coldly at the demonic moon sect members in front of him. Under the hood, Yu Mingqian's face was indifferent. The corner of his lips curled up, and his tone was indescribably casual. Most importantly, none of you will be able to escape today. Especially you, Xieqi. Don't you think so? Chapter 2694. Yu Mingqian's words instantly attracted everyone's attention to Luo Qingtong. Because when Yu Mingqian said those words, her eyes were fixed on Luo Qingtong. Xieqi. Someone felt that the name sounded familiar. Suddenly he cried out in surprise. Isn't that the name that has been spreading around Heavenly Wind Inscription City recently? Xieqi, who came out of nowhere, claimed to be the disciple of the Heavenly Wind Inscription City Lord, Song Cheng's disciple. However, the crowd guessed that this was most likely her way of covering up her actions. In Heavenly Wind Inscription City, she defeated the people of Lungyu Inscription City, and took back the inscription tower for the people of Heavenly Wind Inscription City. Not only that, it was said that she also cured the Heavenly Wind Inscription City Lord, and restored the latter's destroyed life inscription mark. It was also because of this that the people of Lungyu Inscription City did not succeed in their plot to kill the Heavenly Wind Inscription City Lord. And there was also a rumor that this Xieqi was a battle soul master. One had to know that Xieqi was only a young man. Not only that, it was said that his appearance was exceptionally beautiful and evil, making people feel bewitched when they looked at him. But at this moment, everyone looked at the ugly and ferocious birthmark on Luo Qingtong's face and couldn't see how he was handsome. Was this a joke? How could this Luo Xiaoqi be that evil spirit? Everyone's eyes were filled with disbelief. As for Chu Kuer and the others, they couldn't help but cry out. How is this possible? How could she be that Xie? This ugly monster? Chu Kuer's face was filled with excitement. She also knew about Xie. In her heart, she had thought that if she had the chance in the future, she would definitely go and see if the Xie was as outstanding and handsome as the rumors said. But who would have thought that Luo Xiaoqi was actually Xie? Other than the fact that they both had the word qi, how was she similar to Xie? The birthmark on her face was even more disgusting. Chu Kuer's voice was sharp. Yu Mingqian did not refute her. She only looked at Luo Qingtong indifferently. After the latter had broken through to the venerable realm and helped Yi Qianxian increase the strength of his meridians by 10%, he had already recovered his perception of the outside world. When Zhang Beiyue and the others killed that spirit beast, she was very clear about it. At this moment, seeing Yu Mingqian's gaze on her, Luo Qingtong's expression was indifferent. She didn't try to hide it. Same here. The corners of her lips curled up slightly. The smile on her lips was indescribably evil and indolent. It was naturally domineering. You people from the Central Inscription Association are also all-pervasive. Just like rats and bugs on the streets, don't you think so? You were even able to chase me all the way to this abandoned continent. The moment Luo Qingtong said that, everyone was shocked. Luo Qingtong's words were equivalent to admitting her identity. Was she really Xie? Everyone looked at Luo Qingtong at this moment and found that she had changed all of a sudden. Her face was still the same, ferocious, terrifying, and ugly. But now, she was not as ordinary as before. If the previous Luo Xiaoqi was thrown into a crowd, it would be hard to find her. Then now Luo Qingtong was like a self-emitting light source, making people unable to take their eyes off her. Even that ferocious and ugly birthmark did not damage her charm and temperament. Everyone looked at Luo Qingtong dumbfounded. They didn't know how she could change these two completely different temperaments so easily. How could a person become another person without any obstacles? And with the same face? Chapter 2695. Xie, it's useless to talk big. You should know that with your current lineup, you can't defeat us. As Yu Mingqian spoke, his gaze focused on Yi Qianxian. Until now, he was still full of fear and doubt about Yi Qianxian's strength. He sensed that the other party should be very strong. However, since Luo Qingtong and the others entered the cave, this man had not made a move. He was so worried about Luo Qingtong, so why didn't he make a move? There were two reasons. Either the other party's strength was not as strong as he thought, or the other party could not use his full strength for some reason. Yu Mingqian and the people of the demonic moon sect had been following them for a long time. He had used a special method to show Luo Qingtong and the others' movements in the water mirror, so he could see them clearly. Therefore, at this moment, he looked at Yi Qianxian with a very meaningful gaze. Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed slightly when she saw his gaze. She subconsciously blocked Yi Qianxian's figure. The man had not woken up yet. When Yu Mingqian spoke earlier, Luo Qingtong had already increased the strength of Yi Qianxian's meridians to more than 20%, which was close to 30% progress. This was the maximum extent that Luo Qingtong could restore Yi Qianxian's meridians with her current strength. However, because Yi Qianxian's meridians had been maintained below 10% for a long time, it had not been increased to more than 10% for a long time. Therefore, when the meridians suddenly increased to 30%, the enormous and terrifying power that he had been suppressing in his body surged almost instantly and spread to Yi Qianxian's meridians. If he did not control it, the power in Yi Qianxian's body would be enough to break all the meridians that had just been repaired. Therefore, Yi Qianxian's mind was completely immersed in his body, guiding and unblocking the power. Waves of energy surged within his body. If anyone could see the level of power in his body, they would definitely be shocked by the power that had awakened in his body at this moment. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the power was enough to destroy the world. However, at this moment, they were like galloping horses that had been reined in, or like caged beasts. They were all confined within Yi Qianxian's body. No one outside would be able to see the truth. When Yu Mingqian saw Luo Qingtong blocking Yi Qianxian, her eyes flashed. Although he didn't know what happened to the other party, he could tell that he couldn't do anything now. That's good. This way no one would be able to stop him from capturing Xieqi. Of course, even if the other party woke up, he might not be able to stop him. This time, in order to capture Luo Qingtong, Yu Mingqian had made a lot of preparations. The way he saw it, even if Yi Qianxian had some strength, it might not be enough in the face of his preparations. Now that the other party couldn't do anything, it was more advantageous for him. At least, he would have less trouble. And Luo Xiaoqi was destined to be his. Xieqi, come here. Otherwise, I'll kill them all and capture you. Believe me, this answer is not good for you. Yu Mingqian's face was indifferent. A pair of dark eyes stared at Luo Qingtong. At this moment he was very calm. Chapter 2696. When he said that, the Tianfeng Chu clan and the Flying Star Lian clan were in an uproar. They looked in the direction of Yu Mingqian, and the others in despair. They were all in the earth martial arts realm. Only a few of them were in the human martial arts realm. Some of them were in the human martial arts realm, and were only in the 7th or 8th level. However, the other party's strength was enough to crush them. The Zhan family had just been through a round of exhaustion, while the Evil Moon sect was unharmed. More importantly, even if the Zhan family hadn't been exhausted, they wouldn't have saved them. All in all, they were in a situation of certain death. No matter what the outcome of the battle between the Zhan family and the Evil Moon sect was, they would all die if they were caught in it. And at this moment, the only thing that could save them from this hopeless situation was actually Luo Xiaoqi, go with them. Chu Kuer suddenly cried out at this moment. She looked in the direction of Luo Qingtong and gritted her teeth. They want you. Go with them. Maybe we can survive. When she said that, Chu Lingfeng, Chu Xiaofeng, Gu Yifeng, and the others all glared at her. Chu Kuer, what nonsense are you spouting? Chu Xiaofeng shouted at her. You're letting Luo Xiaoqi go with them just to survive? Do you know what they'll do to her? Chu Xiaofeng was furious. In terms of friendship, his relationship with Luo Qingtong was not as deep as Chu Lingfeng and Gu Yifeng's relationship with Luo Qingtong. However, they had interacted with each other along the way. He admired Luo Qingtong's character and ability. Moreover, how many times had Luo Qingtong saved them along the way? Even if he didn't know Luo Qingtong, he wouldn't kick Luo Qingtong when she was down. Not to mention that Luo Qingtong had helped him so many times. After he spoke, Chu Lingfeng stared at Chu Kuer and coldly said, if she goes over, all of you can forget about living either. When Chu Lingfeng said this, his eyes were abnormally ruthless. He was like a wild beast, and Luo Qingtong was more important than the sky in his heart. If the Tianfeng Chu family agreed with Chu Kuer and sent Luo Qingtong over, he would kill them no matter what. Then he would risk his life to rescue Luo Qingtong. He was willing to die. These people who harmed her, none of them should even think about escaping. Hearing this, Chu Kuer's expression froze. She looked in Chu Lingfeng's direction and said angrily, Chu Lingfeng, are you crazy? Don't forget that you are a member of the Tianfeng Chu family. Luo Xiaoqi is just an outsider. Not only that, she hid her identity. Who knows what she is plotting by sneaking into our Tianfeng Chu family's team? You are going to attack us for an outsider. Do you still have a conscience? You ungrateful wretch. When she said this, Chu Lingfeng's expression didn't change. He looked coldly in Chu Kuer's direction. You are the outsiders. For him, only his master, mother, and Suyu were his family. You. Chu Kuer was so angry that she trembled. At this moment, Chu Yufei's voice sounded. Young master. She looked at Chu Lingfeng and said slowly, I know you don't want to part with young master Xieqi. But this time, they just want her to go over, not her life. Chapter 2697. If young master Xieqi doesn't go over, we'll all die. Including you, young master. I believe that even if young master Xieqi had to make a choice, she would still choose to go over. After all, she doesn't want anything to happen to you. Young master Xieqi, what do you think? Chu Yufei's words were much wiser than Chu Kuer's. She threw the question to Luo Qingtong. On the surface, It seemed that she wanted Luo Qingtong to make the choice. But in fact, if Luo Qingtong didn't agree, it would mean that she didn't care about Chu Lingfeng's life at all. In that case, what was the point of Luo Qingtong protecting her? Moreover, she pointed out that Luo Qingtong's life wasn't in danger, which immediately reduced the guilt of the Tianfeng Chu clan and the Lian clan to the lowest. What she meant was, look, Luo Xiaoqi doesn't care about our lives. We're just handing her over to the demonic moon sect. What's wrong with that? No matter how one looked at it, she was forcing Luo Qingtong to go over to Yu Mingqian's side to save their lives. Luo Qingtong looked at Chu Yufei indifferently. Chu Yufei was looking at her with her head slightly raised. The smile on her face was perfect, but the light in the depths of her eyes was unusually provocative and complacent. In Chu Yufei's opinion, Luo Qingtong had no choice at all. If she went over to Yu Mingqian's side, they might still live. But if Luo Qingtong didn't go over, they would all die. There was no need to think about how to choose between the Tianfeng Chu clan and the Lian clan. As for the Zhang clan, it was needless to say. Would they fight against the demonic moon sect just for Luo Xiaoqi? Chu Yufei was very happy in her heart. She was secretly delighted that she could finally suppress Luo Qingtong. Luo Xiaoqi's performance in their team just now was too dazzling. Chu Yuqing and Chu Kuer had targeted her several times, but she had slapped them in the face. Chu Yufei didn't dare to act rashly. But now she could finally see this person's misfortune. Chu Yufei felt an inexplicable sense of exultation in her heart. She felt that she had finally found a way to vent all the grievances she had suffered from Luo Qingtong, as well as the indescribable jealousy and hatred. Luo Xiaoqi, you probably didn't expect to be so unlucky, did you? I don't care if you're Luo Xiaoqi or Xieqi. You won't be able to escape now. As Chu Yufei thought about this, she felt very refreshed. However, she still maintained a calm and sincere expression as she looked at Luo Qingtong. His appearance was even somewhat sorrowful and pleading. Chu Yufei thought that her current appearance would definitely arouse the desolation in the hearts of the Tianfeng Chu clan and the Flying Star Lian clan. After all, everyone wanted to live. After she spoke, the people of the Tianfeng Chu clan and the Flying Star Lian clan became even more agitated. Chu Yufei, Chu Xiaofeng's expression was thunderous. How could he not see Chu Yufei's intention? This woman wanted to retreat in order to advance. She wanted to force Luo Qingtong to side with Yu Mingqian for the sake of everyone. She was so scheming and ruthless. Beside him, Chu Jingyi also looked at Chu Yufei with an indifferent and cold expression. Chapter 2698. We don't agree to exchange Little Seven's life for ours. Gu Yifeng waved the Dragonslayer spear in his hand. The tip of the spear pointed downwards as it hummed faintly. His voice was sonorous and low. Our lives were saved by Little Seven previously. It doesn't matter if we die now. That's right. Hu Zhan, who was beside Gu Yifeng, shouted angrily. Life and death are decreed by fate. Riches and honor are determined by the heavens. We, the Red Flame Mercenary Group, disdain using our companions and benefactors in exchange for our lives. Of course, some people who think they are from prestigious families and have noble status are an exception. I think they don't even know how to write the word shameless. Well said. When Hu Zhan said this, Ouyang Yingyu's incomparably enchanting laughter suddenly rang out charmingly. She walked up to Hu Zhan in a flirtatious manner. It was rare that she did not pinch his ear. Instead, she raised her hand and patted his face. Not bad. You've learned some literary skills. You've been reciting with the leader for a long time, haven't you? When she said this, she lifted her eyelids and looked at Chu Yufei, who was not far away. Her face was firm and resolute. She raised her small face and looked extremely innocent. She smiled charmingly and said, Miss Yufei's words are too profound. We don't understand. But what you mean is that Little Seven will go over there herself and save your lives, right? Why should she? Just because she saved your lives several times. Should she pay with her own life? The Tianfeng Chu family is indeed worthy of being the #1 family in the Tianfeng domain. You're the most thick-skinned. But vulgar mercenaries like us are different. Ouyang Yingyu giggled when she said this. Then she said charmingly, We mercenaries only know one word, and that is kindness. Our lives don't need to be exchanged with little 7. That's right. Our lives don't need to be exchanged with little 7s. At this time, the other mercenaries also spoke up in unison and stood beside them. Old Chun and the others did not hesitate at all. Their lives were saved by Luo Qingtong in the Thousand Silkworms territory. Not to mention this meeting. If it weren't for Luo Qingtong's protection, who would care about the lives of these mercenaries? At that time, he would be lucky if the Tianfeng Chu family didn't use him as a shield. How could he survive? They would never force Luo Qingtong to go to Yu Mingqian's side. Almost all the mercenaries of the Heavenly Wind Mercenary City stood out. After they stepped forward, Lian Xing and the others also slowly stepped forward. We don't agree either. The man's voice was indifferent. However, the content of those words caused Chu Yufei's expression to abruptly change. She was originally mocking Gu Yifeng and the others for overestimating themselves in her heart. So what if they supported Luo Qingtong? As long as the Flying Star Lian clan and the Tianfeng Chu clan joined hands and handed Luo Qingtong over to the other side. If that was the case, they would not be able to turn the tide. However, just as she was thinking this, Lian Xingchen's words gave her a huge blow. How was this possible? How could he disregard the safety of the Flying Star Lian clan for Luo Xiaoqi? What kind of disaster was this Luo Xiaoqi? Chu Yufei's expression was one of disbelief. She looked in the direction of Lian Xingchen and the others. Chapter 2699. Young Master Lian. Don't you care about the Lian family of the Flying Star sector? And you? Are you going to let him make the decision? Chu Yufei bellowed at the Lian family of the Flying Star sector. However, Lian Xingchen's expression did not change at all. Thank you for your concern for the Lian family of the Flying Star sector, Miss Yufei. His voice was full of mockery. But I don't think that the decision is bad for the Lian family of the Flying Star sector. At the very least, we will be known as loyal people even if we die, won't we? You, on the other hand, are free to die if you want to be known as ungrateful people. The Lian family of the Flying Star sector will stay out of it. After he said that, Luo Qingtong chuckled. Young Master Lian, you are indeed wise. She looked at Chu Yufei and the rest of them, whose faces had turned extremely awful, and shook her head. He is playing you like monkeys. Didn't you notice? What the man said just now was that I would either go there myself, or he would kill all of you and capture me. There's no mention of me letting you go after I'm captured. Idiot. After Luo Qingtong said the last 2 words casually, Chu Yufei's face turned pale immediately. She looked at Luo Qingtong with an ugly and indescribable expression. Her mouth opened and closed, not knowing what to say. Yes. The man didn't say that he would let them go after Luo Qingtong was captured. Everything was just their conjecture. Was it true that Luo Qingtong was right, and that they would still be killed even if they handed over Luo Qingtong? Then what kind of mistake had she made exactly? She was basically putting on a monkey show for other people to see. No wonder Luo Xiaoqi said that they were being played like monkeys. Chu Yufei's face was awful. But Luo Qingtong didn't give up giving her the final blow. If I were you, I'd rather die with you than hand me over. After all, it is me that he wants. As long as I'm here, you'll still have room to resist. Handing me over? Do you think you're not dying fast enough? Luo Qingtong sneered. She had originally intended to ignore Chu Yufei, but the other party was so stupid that she couldn't stand it anymore. How much did the other party want her to be unlucky? She couldn't even see through this little trick, yet she still felt very proud of herself, and wanted to provoke her? Little did she know that in front of Luo Qingtong, she was just like a clown who was fooling around without realizing it. Luo Qingtong's words struck Chu Yufei like a bolt from the blue. She had always thought that she was more scheming than others. But at this moment, because she was eager to Luo Qingtong's bad luck, she actually didn't see through Yu Mingqian's intentions. Now that Luo Qingtong had ridiculed her, the blow to her was worse than death. Her pride and arrogance were all trampled under Luo Qingtong's feet in an instant. Chu Yufei felt dizzy in her heart. Just as she was about to faint, Yu Mingqian's chuckling voice rang out. That's indeed the case. He had indeed intentionally led the Tianfeng-Chu family and the Lian family to make a move on Luo Qingtong. This way he would be able to deal with the Zhan family with all his strength. But since he had already seen through it, then I can only create another good show. At this moment his voice suddenly became cold and sinister. Chapter 2700. As his voice rang out, the Evil Moon sect members behind him leaped up in an instant and rushed towards Luo Qingtong and the Zhan family. These Evil Moon sect members had long been controlled by Yu Mingqian using a unique method. At this moment, they didn't dare to disobey his orders. Seeing their figures rushing over, Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed. Then she said to Beiqing, Fengyu, and the others, protect Qianren later. Don't let him get hurt. I have my own way. As she spoke, she suddenly raised her voice and said to the Zhan family members not far away, Young Master Zhan, how about we make a deal? You guys protect the people on my side. I'll help you recover your strength and injuries. As soon as Luo Qingtong's words came out, the Zhan family members, who had been trying to recover their strength, immediately looked at her. Zhan Beiyu's eyes were directly fixed on her. Are you telling the truth? His voice was cold, but there was a hint of eagerness in it. Zhan Beiyue and the others had been ambushed by Yu Mingqian, and were obviously at a disadvantage. They had even thought about whether to capture Luo Qingtong in their hands to test how much Yu Mingqian cared about Luo Qingtong. If they cared enough, they might be able to find a chance. However, before they could carry out this action, Luo Qingtong's voice rang out. Zhan Beiyue's gaze was deep. He didn't know if the young man had seen through their plans, so he deliberately spoke like this. In fact, this was the case. Luo Qingtong had indeed seen through the Zhan family's plans. In other words, as long as the Zhan family members weren't stupid, after discovering that Yu Mingqian wanted to capture her, they would think of using her as a shield. After all, whether it was useful or not, they had to try before they knew. This was also one of Yu Mingqian's schemes. He was such a smart person. How could he casually reveal that he wanted to capture Luo Qingtong? Naturally, Luo Qingtong was targeted by the people of the Tianfeng-Chu clan, the Lian clan and the Zhan clan. As long as the Tianfeng-Chu clan and the Flying Star Lian clan attacked Luo Qingtong, he would be able to deal with the Zhan clan with all his strength. After killing them, he could obtain the ancient god artifact and capture Luo Qingtong. And if the Tianfeng-Chu clan and the Flying Star Lian clan didn't make a move, then the Zhan clan would make a move on Luo Qingtong in order to get rid of their disadvantage. At that time, the Tianfeng-Chu clan and the Lian clan of Flying Star would definitely fight against them for Luo Qingtong. At that time, Yu Mingqian would naturally be able to easily seize the opportunity to exterminate the Zhan family. If both sides didn't make a move, then it wouldn't matter. At worst, he would spend some effort to kill the Zhan family members. Luo Qingtong and the others still wouldn't be able to escape from his grasp. Therefore, no matter how one looked at it, revealing Luo Qingtong's identity wouldn't affect Yu Mingqian at all. On the contrary, if the Tianfeng-Chu clan, the Lian clan and the Zhan clan made a move, it would be more advantageous for him. But at this moment, Luo Qingtong's words broke this advantage. As long as Luo Qingtong could restore the strength and injuries of the Zhan family members, especially their injuries, as long as they could recover, then Yu Mingqian's advantage would no longer exist. Yu Mingqian's eyes suddenly narrowed when he heard this. Chapter 2701. Eat. Her voice was concise and to the point. Zhan Beiyue did not hesitate too much and swallowed the elixir directly. Boom. The aura around him suddenly changed. The power that he had lost before was replenished in an instant. Not only that, the injuries caused by dealing with the spirit beast were also greatly eased and healed. It's useful. The pale look on his face recovered slightly as he spoke to the Zhan family members around him. Then he looked at Luo Qingtong with a deep gaze. Deal. This young man was probably the most bizarre young man he had ever seen. This kind of pill that could be used in the abandoned continent was also extremely precious to them. Zhan Beiyue, as the young master of the Great Heaven region, might not even be able to come into contact with this kind of pill. Luo Qingtong, this weak youth, took it out at once. Thinking of what Yu Mingqian mentioned before, Luo Qingtong's name was Xie, and this was just an alias. Zhang Beiyue's eyes darkened slightly as he remembered this name in his heart. He wasn't from the Heavenly Wind region, nor was he from the Six-Star region. Naturally, he didn't know about Luo Qingtong. But this didn't prevent him from investigating in the future. As long as he could successfully leave here today. Zhang Beiyue's words came out, and in an instant Luo Qingtong nodded. She raised her hand and threw dozens of bottles of pills to them. These pills were all prepared by Luo Qingtong when she was in the Heavenly Wind mercenary city. Except for Chu Lingfeng, who used some before, Luo Qingtong didn't touch the rest. It just so happened that they came in handy. Boom! After Zhang Beiyue and the others took the pills given by Luo Qingtong, those with lighter injuries recovered their strength almost instantly. As for those with more serious injuries, they recovered their strength after taking a few more pills. This was also because Luo Qingtong was an alchemist, and there were many kinds of pills that she refined. If some people couldn't be cured after taking a pill, they could just take another pill. In any case, Luo Qingtong had refined a lot of medicinal pills with the same effect. Moreover, the types of pills were not the same. This was because the same type of pill could not be stacked if taken consecutively within a certain period of time. He had to wait for a period of time. And in this abandoned continent, the elixir pills that Luo Qingtong refined were only a tenth of the medicinal effect. Therefore, one elixir pill was definitely not enough for a seriously injured person. One had to take different types of medicinal pills with similar effects. However, the healing elixir that Luo Qingtong took out was exactly like this. Different types, but the effects were the same. When Zhang Beiyue and the others held it in their hands, they were still very surprised. Especially Zhang Beiyue. For an ordinary person to be able to take out one of these pills, it would already be incredible. Luo Qingtong took out a lot of them. Could it be that she had discovered the ruins of some powerful alchemist? They guessed so in their hearts, but the speed at which they took the pills was not slow at all. Boom! Their figures met the people of the Evil Moon sect who were rushing in front of them. The strength of Zhang Beiyue and the others was not inferior to the people of the Evil Moon sect. In fact, they were even stronger than them. Otherwise, they wouldn't have seriously injured the people of the Evil Moon sect. If the people of the Lian family and the Chu family hadn't arrived and disrupted their plans, they would have wiped out the people of the Evil Moon sect. Chapter 2702. At this moment, with the help of Luo Qingtong, their injuries had healed, and their strength had increased at the same time. They blocked the people of the Evil Moon sect. Although the latter's strength had increased with the help of Yu Mingqian, they were only on par with them. At this moment, the cooperation of Zhang Beiyue and the others was obviously higher. Boom! Zhang Beiyue and the others blocked the people of the Evil Moon sect. When Yu Mingqian saw this scene, his eyes immediately darkened. Xie actually had pills that could be used in this abandoned continent. What was the other party's background? Yu Mingqian was the young master of the Inscription Association, and his status was far from that of ordinary people. He was also highly valued by the Inscription Association, so he could get those pills. However, the pills that Luo Qingtong took out were obviously much more effective than his. At least, when he helped the people of the Evil Moon sect recover their strength and heal their injuries, it was far less effective than Luo Qingtong's pills. His pills also had his self-made medicine inscription array added to them, which was why they had such an effect. What was Luo Qingtong relying on? His face was gloomy, and he didn't know why, but he felt very uneasy. He felt that the other party had too many tricks up her sleeve. Yu Mingqian had already fallen for Luo Qingtong several times before. Previously, the other party had escaped once in Inscription City. Later, the inscription man searching array was useless, so it was another time. Later on, he lurked beside Luo Qingtong, but he couldn't get close to her. It was another time. Yu Mingqian had never spent so much effort on anyone before, but he didn't gain anything. No matter if it was before or now, there was only Luo Qingtong who could make him waste his efforts to such an extent. This time, he absolutely couldn't let her escape. As Yu Mingqian thought this, his eyes suddenly darkened. Without thinking, he rushed in the direction of Luo Qingtong. At the same time, he waved his left hand. Berserk. As his voice rang out, the people of the evil moon sect suddenly froze. Then, almost instantly, they let out indescribably shrill cries. That voice was like the roar of a beast. It was filled with a berserk and unconscious feeling. Then, with a boom, the demonic moon sect members turned into beasts that only knew how to attack and not defend under Yu Mingqian's signal. This was what Yu Mingqian had done to the demonic moon sect members. How could it be so easy to receive benefits from him? Not to mention, these demonic moon sect members were actually disloyal. They wanted to betray him and threaten him with Luo Qingtong. Yu Mingqian used the inscription pattern array he had inscribed on their bodies to easily control them. From the moment these demonic moon sect members agreed to cooperate with Yu Mingqian, they had already embarked on a path of no return. It was just that they didn't know. Yu Mingqian had never intended to let them live in the first place. It wasn't just them. Except for Luo Qingtong, he wasn't going to let go of anyone here. Boom. Yu Mingqian's figure swept towards Luo Qingtong. After the demonic moon sect members went berserk, they attacked Zhang Beiyue and the others even more fiercely than before. Because they only wanted to attack and not defend, the sudden violent attack made Zhang Beiyue and the others unable to resist for a while. Chapter 2703. Bang! The defensive line formed by Zhang Beiyue and the others was suddenly torn open. An expert of the Zhang family was blasted back more than a dozen steps. Puff! He spat out a mouthful of blood and was seriously injured. Fortunately, he still had the elixir that Luo Qingtong had given him. He immediately took one. His injuries were stabilized, but the place where he was at had been broken through by someone else. Boom! Yu Mingqian's figure swept towards Luo Qingtong and appeared in front of her in an instant. Boom! He raised his hand to grab Luo Qingtong. At the same time, his other hand directly hit Yi Qianxian beside her. Master! Evil Doctor! Bei Qing, Fengyu, and the others saw this and hurried forward to stop him. However, their strength had been sealed by Yi Qianxian. The latter had not woken up yet, so they could not unlock the seal. The strength that they could exert was limited. Yu Mingqian was afraid of their strength, so he raised his hand and blasted a battle inscription mark. Combined with his strength, this attack was comparable to the 9th level of the Earth Martial Arts realm. Boom! Bei Qing, Fengyu, and the others were blasted back several steps by the power of the attack. Although their physical strength was tyrannical, and there was almost no injury, they could not stabilize their bodies. Just as they were about to be forced back, a dazzling sword light slashed out from behind them. Boom! Luo Qingtong's life and death yin-yang sword appeared in an instant and directly cut the battle inscription pattern that had blasted away Bei Qing, Fengyu and the others. Its power and speed were slightly reduced. At the same time, a giant claw suddenly slapped out from her body. In an instant, the wind and clouds changed and the sky changed color. The giant claw suddenly appeared in the air and directly hit Yu Mingqian's palm, blasting him away. This giant claw belonged to Little Pig, who had just turned into a wolf not long ago. He bitterly looked at the strength that he had just recovered, but it was gone in an instant. His heart was filled with tears. It was like this every time. When would he be able to show off for a while? Little Pig angrily looked at Yu Mingqian in front of Luo Qingtong, and then slapped out with his claw. Luo Qingtong had reached the level of the Venerable Realm. His left front claw could be fully extended, and now his right claw could be slightly extended. It was equivalent to 2 consecutive attacks. Boom! Seeing another giant claw emerge from the void, Yu Mingqian's eyes turned cold. His right hand quickly drew a battle inscription pattern in front of him. The seal was formed almost instantaneously. Boom! Little Pig's huge claw slammed onto the battle inscription pattern, shattering it into pieces. However, it didn't hurt Yu Mingqian in the slightest. Tisk, it's a protection inscription, and the highest level one at that. How can this kid's inscription strength be so strong? It's illogical. Little Pig felt gloomy. It had been hiding in Luo Qingtong's body all this time, and did not reveal any trace of itself. He thought that his sudden attack would definitely injure Yu Mingqian. He thought he would capture her and interrogate her about the Central Inscription Association. But he did not expect her inscription strength to be so strong. To instantly form a seal, even the previous Tianmingzi would find it difficult to do so at his peak. Chapter 2704. While Little Pig was feeling depressed, Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed slightly. Her eyes flickered as she copied the process of Yu Ming drawing the inscription mark into her eyes. It was a pity that she wasn't strong enough to use the battle inscription pattern. Otherwise, she wouldn't know who would catch who today. Luo Qingtong's eyes flickered. While she copied the inscription pattern, the life and death yin-yang sword in her hand didn't stop. After breaking the battle inscription pattern that had blasted away Beiqing, Fengyu and the others, she changed her move and swept it horizontally. Boom! The life and death yin-yang sword flashed and rushed toward Yu Mingqian. After blocking Little Pig's huge claw, Yu Mingqian rushed toward Luo Qingtong again. When he saw Luo Qingtong's ordinary and powerless sword light, Yu Mingqian didn't intend to dodge. But for some reason, when the sword light was about to split him, Yu Mingqian's heart suddenly tightened. A strong premonition suddenly flashed in his heart. He thought of Luo Qingtong's cunning. With her scheming mind, it didn't make sense for her to suddenly swing such a powerless and murderous sword attack. Although he didn't find anything wrong, Yu Mingqian drew a battle inscription pattern in front of him when the last sword light was about to strike him. Slash. When the sword light hit the battle inscription pattern, it suddenly turned as black as ink. The death blade's radiance flickered like an obsidian. Yu Mingqian's eyes instantly shrank when she saw the thick, deathly stillness energy. What a pity! Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows. She felt very regretful. She didn't use any martial arts on purpose. She only used the sword light of the life and death yin-yang sword. Her purpose was to prevent Yu Mingqian from dodging. As long as such a strike landed on Yu Mingqian, Luo Qingtong was confident that she would be able to open a wound on his body. When the power of death invaded his body, it would be enough to destroy half of his life inscription mark. His strength would be greatly affected. Because Luo Qingtong had repaired the inscription mark of the city lord before, she naturally knew how to destroy the inscription mark in the shortest time possible. Even if Yu Mingqian's inscription skills were higher than Tianfeng city lord's, she could still destroy half of his life inscription mark. But he dodged it. As Luo Qingtong thought of this, her eyes suddenly narrowed and she suddenly retreated. Her figure was extremely fast and in an instant, she had already left Yi Qianming's group. When Beiqing and Fengyu saw this, they hurriedly chased after her. Luo Qingtong's strength couldn't be compared with Yu Mingqian's. If the evil doctor was really captured, they didn't need to live anymore. They could just kill themselves in front of Yi Qianxian. However, as soon as they rushed out, a few violent demonic moon sect members rushed out from the side and stopped them. It was Yu Mingqian who used his mind to call these violent evil moon sect members over. He wanted them to stop Beiqing, Fengyu, and the others. This time, he would not let Luo Qingtong escape. His opponent had almost used up all his trump cards. Yu Mingqian had never seen anyone with the strength of an Empyrean realm like Luo Qingtong. She had almost defeated him. Putting aside the two giant claws from before, the sword light just now really made his hair stand on end. Yu Mingqian had no doubt that if he hadn't listened to the warning in his heart and blocked the sword light, he would have regretted it very much. However, he blocked it, so Luo Qingtong couldn't escape from his hands. When he chased after Luo Qingtong, swoosh. Chapter 2705. Within his body, a terrifying power that could destroy the heavens, and the earth circulated through his meridians like a sheathed sword or a roaring dragon. Like a dragon swimming in the sea, it returned to his dantian, and was sealed up. Boom! A violent sound like a dragon's roar and a tiger's roar was suddenly emitted from his meridians, which had been repaired by 30%. In an instant, the roar that came from his meridians was like a stormy sea or a gust of wind, resounding throughout the cave world. Then, with a boom, Yi Qianxian's body was suddenly shaken by the residual power. This power was less than 1/3 of the power that was flowing in his body before, but when it was shaken out, it was as if the world was falling apart. In an instant, the figures of the evil moon sect people who were blocking Beiqing and Fengyu were shaken into invisible dust. Not even a drop of blood or flesh floated down from the sky. When the power in Yi Qianxian's body shook out, everyone present was stunned, especially Zhang Beiyue and the others. At this moment, they were being attacked by the evil Moon sect people who had gone berserk and did not care about their lives. They were retreating step by step. However, at this moment, the roar of the meridians in Yi Qianxian's body suddenly shook. Their figures, along with the evil Moon sect people, all froze for a moment. Under such circumstances, their gazes towards Yi Qianren were filled with shock and fear. The dragon's roar and tiger's roar that erupted from his body was too powerful. At that moment, they felt as if they were being stared at by a peerless ferocious beast. As long as the other party wanted to, he could tear them to pieces in an instant. It was just a blast of energy and a roar, but it had such power and feeling. How strong was the other party's strength? How earth-shattering would it be if he unleashed it? Bei Qing, Fengyu, and the others were pleasantly surprised. Master. They looked at Yi Qianxian, who seemed to be in the eye of a hurricane. Their faces were almost filled with tears of joy. How long had it been since they had felt Yi Qianxian's violent and tyrannical power? Although Yi Qianxian was able to display such a violent and shocking strength despite the tearing of his meridians, such strength could not be maintained for long. And every time he used it, Yi Qianxian's meridians would immediately be torn apart, causing rivers of blood to flow. For a very long time, he would not be able to use even the slightest bit of strength that his meridians could withstand. But at this moment, they could sense that Yi Qianxian's energy was long and continuous. It was obvious that he was brimming with energy and vitality. Moreover, Yi Qianxian's meridians were no longer torn. Clearly, this power did not exceed the limits of Yi Qianxian's meridians. Master's meridians have strengthened again. Bei Qing, Fengyu, and the others had tears in their eyes. Only God knew how long they had been waiting for this miracle to happen. Although Luo Qingtong had strengthened Yi Qianxian's meridians to 10%, no one knew if she could continue to strengthen Yi Qianxian's meridians. Would there be any hindrances? Would she fail? Bei Qing, Fengyu, and the others were hopeful, but at the same time uneasy. Chapter 2706. Master will definitely be able to regain his former power. Moreover, his lifespan will no longer be limited by the heavenly vein body. The Tiandu body, which was said to be incurable, would die before the age of 28, and would not last more than 5 years at most, could finally be cured. This hope was limited to Luo Qingtong, and they did not know why Luo Qingtong was able to cure Yi Qianxian's heavenly vein body. However, Bei Qing, Fengyu, and the others did not care about this. As long as Luo Qingtong could save Yi Qianxian, it would be fine. Moreover, Luo Qingtong was their future mistress. The more powerful she was, the better it would be for them. Thinking of this, they hurriedly said to Yi Qianxian, "Master, the evil doctor is being chased away. He should be an important figure in the Central Inscriptionist Union. His inscriptionist strength is comparable to an expert at LV9 of the Earth Martial Arts realm. He might be even stronger." When their words rang out, Yi Qianren's violent shockwaves also abruptly retracted. Then he looked coldly at Bei Qing, Fengyu, and the others. He did not ask them why they did not stop the evil doctor. Bei Qing, Fengyu, and the others whose strength was sealed, could not deal with someone at LV9 of the Earth Martial Arts realm. With a swoosh, Yi Qianren's figure disappeared in front of everyone. Bei Qing, Fengyu, and the others hurriedly chased after him. When they left, the people of the Zhan family came to their senses. They looked at themselves and the others. When they left, the people of the Tianfeng Chu family and the Feixing Lian family, who had been stunned by Yi Qianxian's power and Luo Qingtong's power, came to their senses. That person just now is so strong. Not only that, but Luo Xiaoqi's strength is also so strong. They were indescribably dispirited. They could not find a word to describe Yi Qianxian's strength. After all, this was a strength that shocked and frightened the people of the Zhan family. The people of the Tianfeng Chu family and the Feixing Lian family did not know how to describe this strength. But Luo Qingtong's strength. She was only in the venerable realm. How could she fight against the man in black? But the truth was, Luo Qingtong had escaped from Yu Mingqian's hands. Not only that, but the giant claw that emerged from her body and the sword in her hand. The Heavenly Wind Chu family and the Flying Star Lian family could not see the change on Yu Mingqian's face, but from his temporary pause, Luo Qingtong's attack should have affected him. An exalted realm cultivator against a LV9 martial realm cultivator. Unexpectedly, he was able to escape from the opponent's hands, and was able to cause a certain amount of damage to the opponent. If the people of the Heavenly Wind Chu clan and the Flying Star Lian clan hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would have been dead already. They probably wouldn't have believed it at all. Chu Kuer's face was filled with shock. She screamed hysterically at the first moment. How is this possible? How is this possible? How can that bitch be so strong? However, before she could finish speaking, Chu Yuqing slapped her across the face and sent her flying. At this moment, the latter no longer showed any mercy. Chu Kuer was slapped to the ground. She twitched twice and stopped moving. It was unknown whether she was alive or dead. Chu Yuqing's expression was ugly. He looked at the people of the Lian and Tianfeng Chu families and said, Chu Kuer was rude. I've already taught her a lesson. This matter has nothing to do with our third elder. After this is over, I will personally take her to the Red Flame mercenaries to ask for forgiveness. Chapter 2707. Chu Yuqing's words were spoken one at a time, and he felt like he was about to vomit blood. No one had expected Luo Qingtong to be so secretive. Xieqi's identity hadn't been enough for them to pay attention to. After all, rumors couldn't be trusted. Who knew if what he said was true or false? Especially his identity as a battle spirit master. That was complete nonsense. But the strength Luo Qingtong had just revealed was something they couldn't ignore. Luo Qingtong was able to fight against someone in the 9th level of the Earth Martial Realm. Even if it was only for a moment, it was enough to shock everyone. They didn't know Luo Qingtong's name or who she was. Naturally, they could only start with the Red Flame mercenary group. After all, they didn't know whether or not she had anything to do with Tianfeng Inscription City. But her relationship with the Red Flame mercenary group was obvious to all. When Chu Yuqing's voice sounded, Chu Jingyi immediately laughed mockingly. I'm afraid you won't have the chance to apologize in the future. As he spoke, he looked at the unconscious Chu Lingfeng who was being supported by the others. The latter had struggled too violently and wanted to help Luo Qingtong, but had been knocked unconscious by the others. Chu Yuqing had plotted to kill Chu Lingfeng. His family wouldn't let him off. Now he wanted to apologize to Xieqi? But when he spoke, Chu Yuqing's expression turned ugly. He sneered and said, that might not be the case. After all, I didn't try to steal her from him. Chu Yuqing was naturally talking about Yi Qianxian. In his opinion, Chu Lingfeng had taken a fancy to Luo Qingtong and was trying to steal her from Yi Qianxian. When the time came, it was hard to say who would be the unlucky one. If Yi Qianxian became unhappy and attacked the Tianfeng Chu family, who knew if Chu Lingfeng would still be able to hold on to his position as the young master? After all, his opponent's strength wasn't just for show. When they heard Chu Yuqing's words, the expressions of Chu Jingyi and the others also turned ugly. They also had a headache over Chu Lingfeng's improper thoughts towards Luo Qingtong. Previously, because of Chu Lingfeng's identity as the young master, his feelings for Luo Qingtong were absolutely impossible. But now it was all because of Yi Qianxian's identity. Since the other party was so powerful, he was definitely not an ordinary person. His young master snatching someone from the other party was simply courting death. As Chu Jingyi and the others thought this, they no longer had any thoughts of targeting Chu Yuqing and the others. Everyone was thinking about what to do. How could he make Chu Lingfeng give up on Luo Qingtong? If Chu Lingfeng knew what they were thinking, he would definitely shout loudly that he did not have such thoughts about his master. He would not fight with Yi Qianxian for her. However, he didn't know anything at this moment, so he naturally couldn't defend himself. Chu Yufei clenched her teeth so hard that they were about to bleed. She didn't dare to let Chu Yuqing, Chu Jingyi and the others notice her for fear that she would end up like Chu Kuer, but in her heart, she was extremely unwilling to accept this. These people were talking in full swing, But they didn't know if Luo Shaoqi would be able to escape the pursuit of that black-robed man. If she couldn't, then what was the point of talking so much here? Wouldn't it be all for nothing? As she thought this, her heart was full of ridicule. She hoped that Luo Qingtong wouldn't be able to escape. That way, she wouldn't have to worry about the other party finding a chance to make trouble for her. Chapter 2708. Her figure was extremely fast. Relying on the geographical position of this cave world, she rapidly shuttled through this cave world. This cave world was vast, and there was not much difference between it and the abandoned continent world on the surface. The only difference was that one was on the surface, and the other was underground. Otherwise, no matter how powerful Luo Qingtong's blood eyes were, there was no way she could escape from Yu Mingqian's pursuit. Of course, she also had no way to get rid of him. Yu Mingqian's breath firmly locked onto her. The power of inscriptions around his body gathered, and inscription patterns appeared one after another, rushing in all directions. If it weren't for Luo Qingtong's powerful blood eyes and the life and death yin and yang sword in her hand that was extremely good at cutting any illusory and energy, Yu Mingqian's inscription patterns would not have been able to catch up and trap her. With Yu Mingqian's inscription skills and martial arts strength, he would have caught her long ago. After Luo Qingtong's figure dodged his inscription attacks several times, and was not affected by his inscription patterns at all, Yu Mingqian knew that it was impossible to use his identity as an inscription master to keep Luo Qingtong here. If it were an ordinary warrior, they would have been trapped by his inscription technique. Since it was useless against Luo Qingtong, he would not use it. With his martial arts strength, he could still catch Luo Qingtong in his hands. He did not believe that she could keep escaping. Thinking this, Yu Mingqian suddenly changed his strategy. The inscription patterns surrounding his body no longer rushed towards Luo Qingtong, but scattered in all directions, blocking Luo Qingtong's way of turning back and circling around. She could only keep moving forward. In this way, unless there was no end to this cave world, he would be able to catch Luo Qingtong sooner or later. Boom! When Yu Mingqian's inscription patterns scattered in all directions, Luo Qingtong also felt the power behind her change. She felt that Yu Mingqian's inscription patterns scattered in all directions, and everywhere she went was covered in the aura of inscriptions. Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed slightly. The other party was indeed powerful. This move made it impossible for her to take a detour, or lead the other party in circles. In this way, as long as she ran to the end, she could only obediently surrender. Fortunately, she didn't run around randomly this time to stall for time. Is what you said true? Do you feel that the power of the great Tao here is even denser? Luo Qingtong asked Little Pig as she leaped forward. The latter had already appeared in her mind, squatting on her shoulder. Her 4 little hooves were grabbing her clothes, and her 2 pink little ears were bouncing along with the sound of the Luo Qingtong's wind. I can't be wrong. I didn't sense it before either. However, when I first revealed myself, I clearly sensed that the great Tao energy here was even denser. Little Pig's voice rang in Luo Qingtong's ears. It turned out that he was the one who told Luo Qingtong to withdraw from Yi Qianxian's group and run here. After all, the great Tao energy here was so dense. If she threw the little dumpling in, there might be a chance to solve Luo Qingtong's current crisis. What else could she do? Stay there and be captured? The power in Yi Qianxian's body had gone out of control, and he wouldn't be able to help for a while. Therefore, Little Pig told Luo Qingtong to run quickly. Chapter 2709. She looked at the direction Little Pig was leading her, and raised her eyebrows slightly. The great Tao energy is denser than the heart of the continent. Could it be that the heart of the continent is fake? That was what she thought, but then she denied it. Those spirit beasts and great Tao spirits were protecting the heart of the continent. It was obvious that it wasn't a fake heart of the continent. At this moment, she didn't encounter a single spirit beast as she rushed into the depths of the cave world. Clearly, those spirit beasts had all gone forward. That heart of the continent was definitely real. There was only one possibility. The place ahead where the power of the Great Path was denser was probably the key to the change in the heart of the continent on this abandoned continent. Was that the true reason those spirit beasts and great Tao spirits appeared? Luo Qingtong's eyes brightened as she thought of this. She thought of the reason Zhang Beiyue and the others appeared. They were definitely here for the treasure in the heart of the continent. However, they had all been mistaken, including her. Because of the heart of the continent and the appearance of those spirit beasts and great Tao spirits, all of them thought that the treasure was in the heart of the continent. After all, it gave birth to the sky luo grass. And those spirit beasts and great Tao spirits were desperately protecting the heart of the continent. Coupled with the various changes in the abandoned continent, they mistakenly thought that the treasure was closely related to the heart of the continent, or even appeared in the treasure. However, they forgot one thing. That was, these two things didn't have much of a connection at all. Even if the demon beasts in the cave world were nurtured into spirit beasts by the treasure, their mission was still to protect the heart of the continent, not the treasure. They were misled by the actions of those spirit beasts and great Tao spirits. That treasure affected the heart of the continent, but it might not be in the heart of the continent. If Little Pig hadn't sensed the difference in the great Tao energy when he transformed, they would have been completely mistaken. As of this moment, the direction she was heading in was the true location of the rare treasure. Luo Qingtong's eyes shone brightly as she thought of this. Swoosh! Her figure flashed forward at a high speed. Soon, she arrived at the place where Little Pig had led her to. This is the place. Little Pig raised his little hoof and pointed at the pitch-black abyss in front of them. It was unknown just how long the abyss was. It's right below here. Yu Mingqian's figure had already appeared not far behind Luo Qingtong. His figure had been chasing after Luo Qingtong's figure. At this moment, seeing her appear in front of this pitch-black abyss that stretched for who knew how long, his eyes narrowed slightly. For some reason, the abyss in front of him gave him a very bad feeling. If possible, he didn't want Luo Qingtong to escape. Xieqi, you can't escape. As long as you tell me about the inscription of God and obtain it for me, I won't hurt you. His voice was cold. This was the first time Yu Mingqian had tried to negotiate with someone who was weaker than her. In this world, only Xieqi could do this. If Yu Mingqian's thoughts towards Luo Qingtong before were playful and indifferent, then she wouldn't care about it at all. She didn't even care, thinking that she could easily achieve her goal. Chapter 27:10. She was definitely the most difficult person he had ever met. Yu Mingqian could temporarily give up his principles for her, so that she could talk terms with him. However, the moment he said that, Luo Qingtong chuckled. So it's for the inscription of God. It's a pity that I'm not going to tell you. Luo Qingtong's eyes turned cold. Yu Mingqian's conditions were indeed sincere. Indeed, he sincerely wanted to negotiate with her. However, the inscription of God was one of her biggest secrets. She inherited the inscription of the Immortal Slayer Palace and their hatred. Even if Luo Qingtong had no intention of carrying this big trouble for the Immortal Slayer Palace, the enemies of the Immortal Slayer Palace would not let her go for this secret. Under such circumstances, how could she give up on the inscription of God? Moreover, if she told them about the inscription of God, she would have to hand over the life and death sword. This was impossible for Luo Qingtong. If Yu Mingqian had asked for it when she got the inheritance of the Immortal Slayer Palace, and he didn't threaten her, she might have considered it. But this would. Luo Qingtong looked at Yu Mingqian and sneered. Snatch it first and talk terms later. Did he think she was a fool? She didn't like the feeling of being a fish on a chopping block. Moreover, Yu Mingqian wanted to know the whereabouts of the inscription of God so badly. How could he be sure that he was telling the truth? He wouldn't hurt her. But in this world, there were many ways to make people feel like they were dead and leave no trace of injury. Luo Qingtong could find many ways to do it. Would a person like Yu Mingqian not leave a way out for himself? He was afraid that if she agreed, then her life and death would no longer be in his hands. She might even be asked to be loyal to him. Luo Qingtong was not interested in any of this. Instead, she was very interested in seeing him suffer. Xieqi. Yu Mingqian's eyes darkened. He looked at Luo Qingtong. He had already made such a concession. She was actually unwilling. Did she really think that she could escape from the palm of his hand? Yu Mingqian had already lost her patience. He was very afraid of Luo Qingtong escaping again and again. But if it wasn't for the whereabouts of the god's inscription, how could he let them escape again and again? Just because he wasn't ruthless to Luo Qingtong, it didn't mean that he couldn't. Don't force me. As he spoke, he shook off the power around him with a boom. Seeing his actions, Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly narrowed. If she guessed correctly, the other party had most likely seen through her intentions. With Yu Mingquan's strength, if she really wanted to stop Luo Qingtong at all costs and prevent her from entering the abyss, then if Luo Qingtong rushed into the abyss, she would be walking right into a trap. But if she didn't go to the abyss, Luo Qingtong had no other way to go in this cave world. Yu Mingquan's scheming was outstanding. If she really couldn't enter the abyss, it was only a matter of time before she was caught by the other party. Luo Qingtong thought so. And suddenly her eyes turned slightly. Okay, I can promise you. But Luo Qingtong's words stopped here. Suddenly, her eyes brightened, and she looked behind Yu Mingquan and shouted, "Brother, you're here? Let's do it together." Chapter 27:11. Then, her figure suddenly shot up and rushed in the direction of Yu Mingqian. Yu Mingqian had been paying attention to Luo Qingtong's movements. When she changed her words and agreed, his eyes became vigilant. Then, when he heard Luo Qingtong's words, he hesitated for a moment. Was what the other party said true or false? Luo Qingtong's change of words did seem like she was deliberately attracting his attention, so that others could make a move. But this woman's mind was cunning. It was very likely that she was deliberately putting on this act for him to see. Which one was the fake one? Was there someone behind her, or was Luo Qingtong deliberately tricking him? Yu Mingqian's mind was spinning rapidly. When Luo Qingtong's figure shot up and rushed towards him, he finally made a decision. This was true. There was indeed someone behind him. Otherwise, Luo Qingtong's actions would have been to immediately retreat and enter the abyss after calling out that there was someone behind him. Yu Mingqian thought so and immediately blocked Luo Qingtong's sword light with an attack. At the same time, he abruptly turned around and faced the person behind him. A terrifyingly dense power pulsed around his body. In just an instant, countless high-level battle inscription patterns condensed around Yu Mingqian's body. These battle inscription patterns, no matter which one it was, were not something that an ordinary battle spiritualist could condense. But at this moment, beside Yu Mingqian, it was as simple as eating and drinking. It was condensed directly. At this moment, the strength that Yu Mingqian displayed was almost at the peak. The strength of a battle spiritualist was originally far more tyrannical than that of an ordinary martial arts expert. Now, with the support of Yu Mingqian's inscription pattern technique, the strength that he could display was even more terrifying to the extreme. If this strength was used against Luo Qingtong, even with the help of the Blood Eye, the latter would not be able to successfully enter the abyss under his attack. The only possibility was that she would be injured by him, and then captured. Her life might even be in danger. However, this power wasn't directed at Luo Qingtong. Instead, it was directed behind Yu Mingquan. Seeing Yu Mingqian's actions, Luo Qingtong's eyes lit up with a dark light mixed with blood. Then, a laughter that sounded like silver bells rang out. "Thank you for sending me off. I won't stand on ceremony since you've done me such a great favor." As Luo Qingtong spoke up to this point, the sword in her hand changed its angle in an instant. With a boom, it chopped down on Yu Mingquan's attack. In just an instant, under the precisely calculated angle, the aftermath of the collision of the two attacks erupted. Luo Qingtong's figure was like a blue swan and white crane. In an instant, she rode the wind and borrowed the force of the shockwave to rush towards the abyss behind her. His speed was even faster than when he had rushed towards Yu Mingqian. When Luo Qingtong's voice rang out, Yu Mingqian had already seen that there was no one behind him. This woman had tricked him, and she had really succeeded. Yu Mingqian's eyes were filled with shock and anger. Almost instantly, he rushed towards Luo Qingtong's direction. But it was too late. Luo Qingtong had borrowed the force of the collision between his attack and her sword to force him into the abyss in an instant. Then with a swoosh, Chapter 27:12. Xieqi. Yu Mingqian roared angrily, almost gnashing her teeth. She chased after Luo Qingtong and rushed in. After they left for a while, Yi Qianxian also appeared in the abyss. He felt the aura left by Yu Mingqian and Luo Qingtong, and directly jumped into the abyss. Boom! When Luo Qingtong's figure disappeared into the abyss, the surrounding power of the Great Path instantly pressed against her like a tide. The power of the Great Path in this abyss was so rich that it turned into water. Luo Qingtong's eyes were shocked, and she felt as if she had fallen into a sea of water. The point was that there was so much spiritual water and rich power of the Great Path, but she couldn't feel any power from outside the abyss. This was too strange. Luo Qingtong wasn't shocked for too long. Soon, she adjusted the frequency of her breathing. With a swoosh, she rushed in the sea of spiritual water. This was because this wasn't a real sea of water, but a sea of spiritual energy formed by the spiritual energy in the air. Therefore, although Luo Qingtong felt as if she was in the sea, her breathing wasn't affected at all. Not only that, every time she took a breath of spiritual energy, the power in her body was constantly rising. Luo Qingtong's previous strength had been raised to the level of Orange Venerable Realm. But now, under the infusion of the power of the Great Path, which was so rich that it turned into water, Luo Qingtong's strength instantly rose like a rocket. This was also because the power in her body had been completely reborn after she had been promoted to the Venerable Realm. Now the promotion of a small realm only required the infusion of power, and didn't require a qualitative improvement in the realm. This was like a huge bucket. The process of Luo Qingtong's promotion from the Sage Realm to the Venerable Realm was the process of this bucket being reborn. And when it was reborn, the power it could contain became another kind of power. Originally, Luo Qingtong needed a process to accumulate this kind of power and raise her strength. But now, she was in this incomparably rich sea of power of the Great Path. In an instant, this kind of origin power of the Great Path filled the big bucket in her body. It raised her strength to the 9th level of the Purple Venerable Realm. The only pity was that Luo Qingtong couldn't rely on this power to raise her strength to the level of the Human Martial Arts realm. That was because the promotion of a large realm still required her to comprehend the realm and break the barrier in her body. Otherwise, no matter how much power she had, it would be useless. Luo Qingtong was already very satisfied with this result. One must know that there was still a person behind her. It was enough to be able to raise her strength to such a level. If her strength could break through a large realm, the level of her realm level would be able to. Then wouldn't Yu Mingqian's strength have risen to a terrifying level? Then what was she still doing? She would just surrender without putting up a fight. Therefore, after discovering that her strength had stopped at the 9th level of the Purple Venerable Realm, Luo Qingtong's anxious heart was immediately relieved. She was really afraid that the power of this sea of power of the Great Path could help her continue to improve. Chapter 27:13. Luo Qingtong heaved a sigh of relief when she thought of this. She dived deeper into the abyss. There was no shelter in this abyss at all. There was rich power of the Great Path everywhere, but the resistance after the power of the Great Path turned into water was too strong. Moreover, in such an environment, no matter how strong Yu Mingqian was, it was impossible for her to directly lock onto Luo Qingtong's figure and appear beside her through so much power of the Great Path. Therefore, Luo Qingtong did not have to worry about being caught by Yu Mingqian. Otherwise, she would really be done for. Luo Qingtong's figure quickly swept forward. Soon, a dot of light appeared in front of her. That dot of light was very obvious and dazzling in the sea formed by the power of the Great Path. Almost at the moment when Luo Qingtong dived over, she saw it. She saw that the dot of light became brighter and brighter. Then, as Luo Qingtong moved forward, it became clearer and bigger. It turned out that it was a huge blood-red city. Luo Qingtong's eyes were shocked as she looked at the towering city in front of her, that seemed to crawl at the bottom of the abyss like a giant beast. The size of this city alone was already beyond her imagination. In Luo Qingtong's eyes, this city stretched as if there was no end to it. It was extremely vast and boundless. Luo Qingtong could not find any words to describe the towering, majestic, domineering, and fierce city of this city. Above this blood-red city, there were countless spikes erected. The slightly flickering dark blood-red light and fierce color was at the bottom of this dark abyss. The city walls were mottled and broken, and the city's body was seriously collapsed, but it did not detract from its charm and momentum. Beside this blood-red city, there was an existence that made Luo Qingtong suck in a breath of cold air. She saw a huge beast that was almost as tall as the sky and the earth. Its huge head seemed to be able to break the sky of the abyss. It crawled beside the blood-red city. The gigantic spirit beast curled up its body. Layer by layer, it almost filled the entire bottom of the abyss. It was unknown how long it had been dead. Its entire body, except for its head, had turned into white bones. The skeletons stood in great numbers. However, that malevolent and domineering head was still held high above the pile of bones. The two bony wings around its body spread out, as if it was about to fly. However, its skeletal wings had been broken long ago, and many of the bones in its body had been shattered. Above the raised head there was even flesh and blood. A huge wound appeared on its forehead. But even so, one could still see the awe-inspiring might and domineering aura of this giant beast when it was alive. Torch Dragon. Little Pig sucked in a breath of cold air when he saw the giant beast. It poked its head out of Luo Qingtong's bosom and looked at the glorious dragon in front of it in shock. It's actually the Torch Dragon, the legendary giant beast of darkness, born at the border between light and darkness. It has supreme power and the ability to travel back and forth between the past and the future. It's one of the prehistoric giant beasts that created the world. It's in existence countless times more powerful than the ancient divine beasts. Oh my God, why is it here? Little Pig's eyes were filled with extreme shock. Chapter 27:14. She saw the Torch Dragon's claw resting on the majestic Blood City, obviously showing a protective stance. It flapped its wings and looked like it was about to soar into the sky. However, that claw of the Torch Dragon was resting on the majestic Blood City. Could it be that it was not about to soar into the sky, but was flapping its wings and puffing out its chest to defend against some kind of attack? And that attack was directed at this Blood City? This ancient beast was the guardian spiritual beast of this Blood City? Luo Qingtong took a deep breath at the thought of this. She knew what it meant to have a divine beast as a guardian spiritual beast, and an ancient behemoth as a guardian spiritual beast. It meant that the owner of this Blood City was far more powerful than the Torch Dragon. Otherwise, why would such a gigantic beast listen to the other party's orders and protect this Blood City with its life? One must know that this Torch Dragon was obviously killed in the process of protecting this Blood City. However, why did the other party not destroy this Blood City after killing the Torch Dragon? Moreover, as an ancient beast, the Torch Dragon's flesh and blood contained an infinite amount of energy, all of which were the essence of the great Tao of heaven and earth. Why did the other party not take it away? As Luo Qingtong thought of this, she flew towards the Blood City. The closer she got, the more she could feel the majesty of this Blood City. That sharp and terrifying aura had not dissipated after so many years. Not only that, the aura of the Torch Dragon was even more terrifying. Even after so many years, its flesh and blood, even though it was an ancient beast, had turned into white bones. However, the terrifying aura and coercion of the great Tao surrounding its body did not diminish in the least. Luo Qingtong could not even get within 100 meters of it. The latter's body was surrounded by an extremely terrifying and powerful energy. Under the influence of this energy, no one who was weaker than it could even dream of getting close to it. This ancient beast, even in death, would not allow its dignity to be tarnished. Luo Qingtong looked at this ancient beast and did not go any closer. Instead, she turned towards the huge Blood City. Fortunately, the Blood City and the Torch Dragon's corpse were far enough apart. Otherwise, Luo Qingtong could forget about getting close to this Blood City. Looking at the sea of spiritual energy that was faintly discernible as it revolved around the Torch Dragon and the Blood City, Luo Qingtong understood that this was the reason why the power of the Great Tao was so rich here. At the same time, this was also the source of the heart of the continent that produced the Great Tao spirit and spiritual beasts. Previously, Luo Qingtong did not think that there was any special treasure that could cause such a change. However, after seeing this blood city and the torch dragon, she no longer had any doubts. After all, putting everything else aside, the energy emanating from the torch dragon's flesh and blood alone was enough to cause a mutation in the heart of the continent in this abandoned continent. Not to mention this was the blood city. As Luo Qingtong thought of this, she immediately dashed into the blood city. Just as she dashed into the dilapidated but still imposing city gate, there was a loud boom. Not far behind Luo Qingtong, 1,000 ripples were stirred up. It was Yu Mingqian. She had also noticed what was happening. She quickly flew over. Seeing his figure, Luo Qingtong's eyes instantly darkened. "TSK, I almost forgot about him." Luo Qingtong's figure dashed towards the blood city. Chapter 27:15. There was no other reason other than the fact that there was no energy of the Great Path in this red city. The ocean of energy of the Great Path seemed to be blocked by an invisible force. This situation was very unfavorable to Luo Qingtong. Previously, she relied entirely on the resistance and shielding effect of the Great Path to prevent Yu Mingqian from catching up to her. Now that there was no obstruction from the Great Path, it was very likely that Yu Mingqian would be able to catch up to her soon. "Quick! Can you sense where is the place that is emitting the rich power of the great Tao in this blood city?" Luo Qingtong asked Little Pig, who was in her arms. The red city blocked the energy of the Great Path. Then the only place that was emitting the rich energy of the Great Path could only be the location of the rare treasure. Luo Qingtong could only hope that Little Pig could sense it. Otherwise, she would not have the chance to find the rare treasure in such a huge red city. As for Xiao Tuanzi, Luo Qingtong could not count on it. Initially, she thought that the rich energy of the Great Path here could awaken the little guy. However, Luo Qingtong had been moving in the ocean of energy of the Great Path for so long, but it did not move at all. Obviously, the energy of the Great Path here was not suitable for it to absorb. Since that was the case, Luo Qingtong could only place her hopes on the rare treasure. When Luo Qingtong's words were heard, Little Pig quickly replied, "Yes. It's right in front." As it spoke, it lifted its little hoof and pointed towards the center of the red city. "All right." Luo Qingtong nodded and leaped towards the center of the red city. As she leaped towards the center of the red city, Yu Mingqian's figure had also rushed into the red city's gate. "Xieqi." Seeing Luo Qingtong's figure disappear from his sight, Yu Mingqian's eyes narrowed and immediately chased after her. The torch dragon and the red city here had also shocked him. To think that such a terrifying existence was hidden in this abandoned continent. It was obvious that the ancient divine object that the demonic moon sect had mentioned before was true. However, did Xieqi appear here by accident, or did he purposely rush here? Yu Mingqian's heart sank. He realized that he couldn't understand the person in front of him anymore. He had originally thought that she was just an ordinary youth with some strange abilities. Later on, he found out that she was a woman. Moreover, she was not lacking in scheming, strength, and talent. In the end, it escaped from his hands again and again, causing him to have no choice but to run around tirelessly. Yu Mingqian had never met a woman as difficult to deal with as Luo Qingtong. She had broken his understanding of women. The kind of troublesome, disdainful existence. Yu Mingqian's eyes narrowed. She inexplicably wanted to investigate Luo Qingtong's identity as a woman. What would the other party look like? It was a pity that the other party's concealment ability was too strong. Otherwise, he would know her true identity and appearance. However, it was the same if he caught the other party now. As long as she fell into his hands, her identity and appearance would naturally be exposed. As Yu Mingqian thought of this, he suddenly sped up a little. As he chased after Luo Qingtong, with a swoosh, Luo Qingtong's figure quickly leaped past the collapsed buildings and streets, shuttling through the red city at lightning speed. Relying on the obstacles of the collapsed buildings and the cracks on the ground, Luo Qingtong's figure tried her best to keep a distance from Yu Mingqian. Boom! Her figure leaped from the alley into the huge square in front of her. Chapter 27:16. In the middle of the huge central square, there was a statue that seemed to be able to support the heaven and earth, standing in the middle of the square. From the appearance of the statue in the square, it seemed to be a woman. Her body was curvaceous from top to bottom, and she was wearing a tight blood-red armor, which made her look unusually charming and seductive. For some reason, the face of the statue seemed to be hidden in a cloud of mist, which made it difficult for people to see clearly. Even if Luo Qingtong had activated her blood-red eyes to the extreme, the face of the statue still seemed to be shrouded in a veil, and it was impossible to see clearly. This statue had been here for who knows how many years. It had obviously experienced the collapse of the city, the destruction of the buildings, and the bones of the torch dragon, but there was not a single bit of damage on its body. Not only that, the luster on the surface was shining, revealing the skin as white as snow, black hair like a waterfall, and the blood-red armor was biting cold. It looked like a real person, vivid and lifelike. If not for the fact that her body was so huge, and that the bottom was connected to the base of the bronze liquid, Luo Qingtong would have thought that this was a real person. And it was a giant. This is the owner of this blood-red city? Luo Qingtong looked at the statue that appeared in the central square of the city. Usually, people who would appear here would be the founder of a city, or its owner. There should be no doubt about the identity of this woman. But for some reason, Luo Qingtong looked at this statue, and inexplicably felt that it gave her a very familiar feeling. She felt that she had seen this statue somewhere before. But it was obviously her first time in this blood-red city, and it was also her first time seeing such a statue. If she had seen it before, with this statue's special temperament and aura, and the face that could not be seen clearly, how could she forget it? Just as Luo Qingtong was thinking about this, suddenly, there was a sound of a figure breaking through the air behind her. It was Yu Mingqian who had caught up. Bang! Yu Mingqian's figure spread out, his sleeves like wings, and with a boom, he smashed a half-collapsed wall and building in front of him into powder. In an instant, his figure appeared at the end of the alley behind Luo Qingtong. And all the buildings behind the alley that were in the way of Yu Mingqian's pursuit of Luo Qingtong were all smashed into powder. He did not believe that Luo Qingtong could hide in this city for long. Seeing Yu Mingqian's figure appear, Luo Qingtong's pupils shrank. Her gaze quickly swept across the square in front of her. Except for that huge statue, there was nothing else in this central square. The place was so big that it took up almost 1/5 of the entire Blood City. There was only a statue standing there, not even a single building. So, where was the so-called treasure? Luo Qingtong's gaze instantly. Based on her knowledge, rare treasures should be the treasures in this Blood City. Since it was a treasure, it would definitely be placed in the most important place to be protected. But at this moment, except for this statue, there was nothing else in this square. So, where was the treasure? Humph, did you point to the wrong place? Luo Qingtong gritted her teeth and asked Little Pig in her arms. Chapter 27:17. When Luo Qingtong's voice sounded, Little Pig's voice also sounded hastily. No, it's here. Master, it's this statue. The power of the great Tao emanating from its body is the densest. That rare treasure should be on its body. When Little Pig's voice sounded, Luo Qingtong's gaze instantly froze. On this statue. She looked at the statue and quickly found something wrong on the latter's wrist. On this statue's wrist, there were 2 blood-colored bracelets. These 2 blood-colored bracelets were engraved with the blood-colored red spider lily, intertwining with the blood-colored devil's snare. They intertwined with each other, forming the posture of twin lotuses. It made the 2 blood-red bracelets seem like divine objects that were being consecrated on the other side of the Yellow Springs River. They carried a devilish and enchanting aura, and they seemed like divine objects of the heavens and the earth, pure and inviolable. These 2 bracelets were real bracelets, not decorations on the statue. Luo Qingtong looked at them, and there was a flash of astonishment on her face. She didn't expect that the treasures in this Blood City were actually these 2 bracelets. The dense power of the great Tao emanating from the statue was emitted by these bracelets. Let's go. Although she didn't know if these 2 bracelets could solve her current crisis, she still didn't know. But at this moment, Luo Qingtong could only treat a dead horse as a living one. One had to know that at this moment, in this huge plaza, there was no shelter other than this statue. It was impossible to pass through this plaza and leave from other places. Without the buildings and alleyways to block her, Luo Qingtong couldn't outrun Yu Mingqian. And the latter's strength and speed were at their peak in this open space. As long as the other party wanted to, they could definitely catch her before she could escape. As for the trick, Luo Qingtong had already used it once before. She wasn't stupid enough to believe that Yu Mingqian would fall for it a second time. Therefore, she could only place her hope on these two bracelets. Hopefully, they would be of some use. Hopefully they weren't just for show. With that in mind, Luo Qingtong leaped up and charged towards the huge statue. Just as her figure disappeared, Yu Mingqian's figure instantly appeared where she had been. With a swoosh, he stretched out his hand and instantly caught the afterimage that was left in the air. Boom! Yu Mingqian's figure disappeared in an instant. She once again chased after Luo Qingtong. Without the obstruction of the building, Luo Qingtong's figure was completely visible in front of him. Yu Mingqian closed in on Luo Qingtong in an instant. With his strength at the 9th level of the Earth Martial Realm, it would be too easy for him to catch up with Luo Qingtong. However, Luo Qingtong would not allow herself to be captured without a fight. Without the obstruction of the buildings, she still had her bloody eyes. Although she couldn't prevent Yu Mingqian from catching up to her like before. But if he wanted to catch her, it wouldn't be so simple. Boom! Luo Qingtong seemed to have eyes on the back of her head. Almost at the moment when Yu Mingqian was about to grab her, her figure disappeared in front of him. Luo Qingtong's pupil technique was activated to the extreme. The bloody light in her eyes was so red that it seemed to drip blood. The whites of her eyes were bright red, as if they were dyed with blood. It was extremely demonic and evil. Chapter 27:18. Boom! Luo Qingtong's figure moved around in the air. Every time she stopped, she would avoid Yu Mingqian's next attack. Luo Qingtong's blood-red eyes spun rapidly. Every movement of Yu Mingqian in the next second appeared in 3D in Luo Qingtong's eyes. A virtual scene appeared in her eyes. Paragon Ocular Technique of Foresight. This was a new ocular technique that Luo Qingtong had unlocked after ascending to the Paragon realm. This ability allowed her to foresee what would happen to her within a certain period of time. This event must be closely related to her. The time and range of the events that she could foresee were determined by Luo Qingtong's ocular technique and mental strength. Luo Qingtong had just unlocked this ability not long ago. The range and time that she could foresee was limited to 1 second of events that happened around her. However, this was enough to face Yu Mingqian's attack. However, this ocular technique consumed a lot of mental strength. After Luo Qingtong used it 5 or 6 times in a row, she felt that her eyes were swollen and the operation of the eye technique in her eyes was stagnant for a while. Obviously, this was due to excessive mental strength consumption. Once her mental strength was exhausted, Luo Qingtong would temporarily become blind. By then, she could only wait for Yu Mingqian to catch her. Fortunately, after dodging Yu Mingqian's attacks a few times, Luo Qingtong was now near the bottom of the statue. Swoosh! Luo Qingtong's figure followed the bottom of the statue and climbed up its body. Yu Mingqian's eyes darkened when he saw this. He was not stupid. He saw Luo Qingtong's action of going straight for the statue, and then looked at the statue that was different from the dilapidated scene in the Blood City. How could he not know that Luo Qingtong wanted something from the statue? Yu Mingqian's gaze turned extremely solemn as she thought about the power of the torch dragon outside the Bloody City, and the existence of the ancient divine item. He looked up and saw Luo Qingtong quickly climbing up the statue. The young man's figure was unusually agile and light on this huge statue. In almost an instant, he had already climbed up to the statue's thigh. Yu Mingqian knew that it was impossible for him to catch Luo Qingtong. At the very least, not for the time being. This woman had broken many of his rules that he had never done before. This was the first time he had negotiated terms with someone who was weaker than him. This was the first time he had been tricked by someone. This was the first time he couldn't catch someone who was weaker than him. This was the first time he was helpless against someone. This person's strength was inferior to his status was inferior to his, and his influence was inferior to his. But time and time again he was defeated. If someone had told him before today that he would be defeated by someone who was inferior to him, Yu Mingqian definitely wouldn't have believed it. But at this moment, he had to admit that he really couldn't do anything to Luo Qingtang. The path from the edge of the square to the statue was his last chance to catch Luo Qingtang. But she still managed to escape. Yu Mingqian didn't know how Luo Qingtang did it. But he knew that he couldn't let Luo Qingtang get the ancient divine item. Otherwise, he would be the next unlucky one. Xieqi, you forced me to do this. Yu Mingqian's voice was cold. In just an instant, an extremely powerful and terrifying aura gathered around him. Chapter 27:19. When that power rose, Luo Qingtang instantly felt a sense of danger. She looked down at Yu Mingqian. The latter's strength had been gathered to the peak. In the next second, with a boom, it blasted towards Luo Qingtang. Countless inscription patterns swirled in the air, stacking on top of each other, forming an extremely powerful and terrifying inscription pattern. The power emitted from these inscription patterns could completely kill Luo Qingtang. Even if Luo Qingtang could use the life and death sword to cut through these inscription patterns, how many could she cut through? As long as one of them was left, Luo Qingtang would die immediately. It could be said that this time, Yu Mingqian was not prepared to give Luo Qingtang a chance to escape. The other party was obviously aiming for that ancient divine object. Although Yu Mingqian did not know what that ancient divine object was, what its use was, and how Luo Qingtang knew it was here, this did not prevent him from preparing for a rainy day. Whether that ancient divine object would eventually cause Luo Qingtang to become a threat to him or not, he would not let Luo Qingtang go on like this. The other party would either submit or die. Boom! As those attacks blasted towards Luo Qingtang, the latter's expression was indescribably solemn. The light in her eyes was changing violently. The blood-red light in her eyes was extremely thick and sticky, as if it was about to flow out from her eye sockets. That was the sign that Luo Qingtang's blood-red eyes were operating to the limit. But no, all of them were not working. Her eyes reflected the attack trajectories of those inscription patterns. The attacks of these inscription patterns were completely different from the attacks of ordinary martial arts experts. No matter how strong and concentrated the attacks of those martial arts experts were, there were still traces to follow. After all, they were all evolved from martial arts. But Yu Mingqian's attacks were different. His attacks were all composed of the inscription patterns he had carved himself. These inscription patterns were formed by him in an instant. Under such circumstances, these inscription patterns all moved according to Yu Minglian's will. Now that they were under his control, Luo Qingtang had no place to dodge these attacks. She could either resist or jump down and surrender. But how could Luo Qingtang surrender? These words did not exist in her dictionary. Luo Qingtang's eyes froze. She was ready to resist. Boom! Luo Qingtang's strength also rose to the extreme in an instant. At the same time, she unsheathed the life and death-in sword and drew a semicircle as cold as the moonlight in front of her. Clang clang clang. Rays of black and white light flashed. Luo Qingtang held the life blade and the death blade in her hands. The two rays of annihilation light in her hands flew out instantly. Annihilation. Life and death. Fuse. Boom. The rays of annihilation light from the life blade and the death blade annihilated and transformed most of the power of the inscription patterns in front of them. At the same time, the two rays of annihilation light merged in an instant and turned into a Tai Chi Yin-Yang pattern. Then with a boom, it collided with the power of the inscription patterns. And strange fireworks floated out of Luo Qingtang's body. Soul of all flames. Fusion of all flames. These fireworks in Luo Qingtang's body were all flame spirits condensed by her soul of all flames. At this moment, the power of these flame spirits was astonishing. Each of them was equal to her own power. Chapter 27:20. Rumble. The power of the two sides collided in an instant. A huge and violent power swept out from the place where the two sides collided. Then, with a boom, it spread out in all directions like a raging river that had burst its banks. Rumble. Luo Qingtong's figure moved around the statue, dodging the attack of the residual power. At the same time, her eyes were fixed on the place where the two forces collided. Yu Mingqian's eyes were the same. The power of the collision between the two was simply vast and mighty. Yu Mingqian didn't expect that Luo Qingtong's body was hiding such a terrifying power. If he wasn't here today, but any expert in the earth martial arts realm, Luo Qingtong, a person with the strength of the purple venerable realm, would have escaped from the opponent's hands. The venerable realm and the earth martial arts realm. The difference was more than the difference between heaven and earth. The power that Luo Qingtong showed at this moment was simply amazing. Yu Mingqian's eyes were extremely serious. It was the first time that he was so shocked by a person with the strength of the venerable realm. It was also the first time that he was worried that his attack would be blocked by a person with the strength of the venerable realm. He should have used all his strength just now and not let the opponent have any chance to escape. Yu Mingqian clenched his fists. He didn't expect Luo Qingtong to have such strength. So, although he wanted to kill Luo Qingtong if she didn't surrender, the power he used was far from all his strength. Boom! Just as Yu Mingqian's eyes were serious, there was a loud boom where the two attacks collided. In the next second, an attack flew out and blasted towards Luo Qingtong. It was an inscription pattern. Luo Qingtong's attack couldn't be blocked. Boom! Seeing the attack flying towards her, Luo Qingtong's face was unusually serious. At this moment, all the strength in her body was exhausted. The fusion of the soul of 10,000 flames, the annihilation attack of the life blade, and the death blade of the life and death blade, were all the killing moves that she could use. Naturally, the amount of energy consumed was also the greatest. At this moment, her body was completely empty. She couldn't mobilize any energy at all. Otherwise, he wouldn't have stayed here for so long and would have continued to climb up. One had to know that if he had gotten those two bracelets earlier, even if he had only gotten one of them, he would not have been able to do anything. She should be able to resolve her current crisis. Luo Qingtong thought so, and her eyes flashed with a trace of fierceness. Bang! Her figure instantly rushed towards the inscription pattern. The latter's power had also been consumed in the series of collisions just now. At this moment, the flickering light was much dimmer than before. But even so, it wasn't something that the powerless Luo Qingtong could deal with. Seeing that Luo Qingtong's body was about to collide with the attack, Yu Mingqian's face flashed with a strange color. To think that the other party would rather commit suicide than agree. Wait a minute. His pupils constricted as he saw Luo Qingtong's figure approaching the inscription pattern. With a swoosh, she took out a pile of golden threads. These threads weren't anything else. They were the threads of the 1,000 filaments kingworm that Luo Qingtong had obtained previously. Luo Qingtong used these threads to condense a thread shield and blocked in front of her. Boom! The blood-red color in her eyes surged violently as she searched for the point in the inscription pattern that she needed. Chapter 27-21. Boom! Luo Qingtong's figure flew out along with the shield. She spat out a mouthful of blood. Her face was pale, but the curve of her lips was unusually evil and dazzling. You sent me on my way again. I can't thank you enough for your kindness. Luo Qingtong raised her finger and gave Yu Mingqian the middle finger. Yu Mingqian saw the two bracelets on the wrist of the statue as she flew past. Those two bracelets are real bracelets. Yu Mingqian instantly realized that Luo Qingtong's goal must be the two huge blood bracelets. The two blood bracelets should be the ancient divine objects that the people of the Evil Moon sect had told him about. Yu Mingqian's eyes darkened as he thought about it. He finally understood the purpose of Luo Qingtong rushing to block the inscription pattern. She wanted to use the impact of the inscription pattern and the silk shield to rush to the two blood bracelets. One had to know that the statue's hands were overlapped. Her hands were leaning on the sword, and the tip of the sword was on the ground. The two bracelets were right next to each other. He could not let her get the two bracelets. Yu Mingqian's eyes narrowed, and he made a decision in an instant. He wanted to use the power in his body. Although that power was not a good thing for him, and he would have to pay a heavy price in the future, he did not care so much. Boom. Yu Mingqian's figure flew up in an instant. His figure seemed to pass through time and space in an instant, blending into the world. He appeared behind Luo Qingtong in an instant. The sky martial arts realm. Yu Mingqian's speed was clearly due to the true inheritance of the Great Path. Otherwise, it was impossible to be so fast. It was as if his body had become one with the world. Boom. When Yu Mingqian appeared behind Luo Qingtong, the latter had just rushed to the wrist of the statue and was about to touch the two bracelets. However, before Luo Qingtong could make a move, she heard a sharp wind behind her. Then, an extremely cold murderous intent swept out in an instant. Boom. Yu Mingqian raised his hand and attacked Luo Qingtong. He could not give this woman any chance. If it were someone else, Yu Mingqian would definitely choose to capture them after his strength had soared. But this person was Xie Qi, who could escape from his hands again and again in the venerable realm, and forced him to use the forbidden power in his body. If he treated her as an ordinary person, Yu Mingqian would be hopelessly stupid. He would rather kill Luo Qingtong than give her the slightest chance to escape from him and obtain the two ancient godly items. Indecisiveness will only lead to chaos. Yu Mingqian's eyes narrowed, and he did not hesitate at all. Luo Qingtong saw his strength soar and suddenly appeared behind her. Her pupils shrank in an instant. She had almost used up all her trump cards, and the power in her body was gone. There was no way she could resist Yu Mingqian's attack. What should she do? Luo Qingtong's blood-red eyes turned quickly. Yu Mingqian's figure was reflected in her pupils. She was using the power of foresight. However, just as she was about to use this eye technique, her eyes suddenly lit up. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.